They feel helpless, they don't feel heard, they have nowhere to turn.
In all honesty, we try to lay low a little bit because of the fear that we would not be able to camp there.
And I titled it A Shot Across the Bow of the Good Old Boys.
Hello everybody. I don't think I've ever done a video before on here, but yeah, I wanted to tell y'all what frustrates me a little bit about permits.
The cockroach of the week is, drumroll please, Allie Feaster Smith.
We can't be apathetic about what's going on in our state. We have to all pull up our bootstraps and get on top of this. So you're right. There's a problem out there. I mean, and man, you can see it everywhere.
Well, look, we have allowed government to become our wherewithal to everything.
Well, I've not heard my name in stable or Baton Rouge in stable in the same sentence in a long time.
You're about to be killed by a Zamboni, or you're gonna die in 5 minutes.
This Bossier Watch live broadcast is brought to you by David B. Womack for all your contracting and construction needs. The Outdoor News, fishing and outdoors for our area. Acadiana Mortgage, over 23 years in the mortgage business. Pelican Training and Consulting is an IWTP customized training provider with over 25 years of success to show for it. Call them for a free consultation today. Pelican Training and Consulting matches employers with 50-plus employees with training dollars. Smarter Geek, making technology easier. And the many supporters, donations, and folks sharing information and watching out for Bossier. Now, grab your popcorn and a drink. Here we go. This Bossier Watch live broadcast is brought to you by David B. Womack for all your contracting and construction needs. The Outdoor News, fishing and outdoors for our area. Acadiana Mortgage, over 23 years in the mortgage business. Pelican Training and Consulting is an IWTP customized training provider with over 25 years of success to show for it. Call them for a free consultation today. Pelican Training and Consulting matches employers with 50-plus employees with training dollars. Smarter Geek, making technology easier. And the many supporters, donations, and folks sharing information and watching out for Bossier. Now, grab your popcorn and a drink. Here we go. Zandra, can you hear us?
I can.
Great, and we've got your audio. That's even better.
Oh, awesome. Hello.
How are you tonight?
Hello. You sound good, actually.
But I'm happy because the 7th grade football team at Elm Grove are district champs. So,
hey, that's always a good thing. Yeah.
It is.
So, well, Zandra.
Yeah, go ahead, Duke. I'll let you lead this.
Yeah, Zandra, you watching the show, and you're running for school board. I mean, and we started out, we were talking about how we had gotten a message about why had we not had a debate or set up a debate, because we'd done debates before, and your husband was in one of the council debates and did really well. I mean, really a great guy. Actually, everybody that ran for that council seat, Brian Hammonds, Mr. Lombardino, your husband, all great people. And I think any one of those folks would have served that district well. But, here you're wanting to serve as well, too. And we, haven't covered that. But somebody was critical of us that we hadn't covered it. And so we were talking about it. You chimed in the comments, and here you are. You're available. So what is your why?
Well, serving on school board is just an addition of what I've already been doing. I've worked in education. Education has always been and will always be my passion. I have a soft spot for our young people, especially. My mom is a retired Bossier School Board educator. She was an educator for almost 30 years. And my dad is a pastor. So it comes natural that jumping in and serving is nothing that's alien or new to me. Now, when I found out that the school board seat was available in my district, considering I'm constantly working in education, I'm constantly talking and advocating for education, I'm already working on different committees with Bossier School Board, why not do even more to or try to get on the board to do more to help our city education, our young people, and all that comes with that? Because I see where we are, I see where we need to be, and there seems to be this wall before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID that prevents parents from being involved or aware. I see the teachers that are frustrated and leaving. Teachers go to school and pay a good amount of money to go to school, and time and energy and effort to get their certifications and everything else, and they're told they can't teach. So what have they been doing? They've been leaving. We don't have a shortage of educators. We have great teachers, especially in South Bossier, but they're exhausted. They're tired. Their complaints, concerns, desires have fallen on deaf ears. And the same for our students that we can't get to come into the classroom. They're disengaged. They've given up on themselves and other things. Behavior has been an issue because of a number of things. I see the issues with bullying. I've dealt with that with my daughter and my son. And I see our young people with mental issues, as we all have, but they're dealing with social and emotional issues that are not being addressed. We have our young people taking their lives or self-harming. Another big issue that constantly comes up in my home, I have a child that's in middle school and a child that's in high school, and both of them talk about how much vaping is becoming an issue. Our young people are lost because they need somebody who cares enough to pull them in and not just sit on school board and say that we're going to do something, but do something. Not saying that that's what, our school board members that are currently on the board are doing, but I know that I'm strong enough and bold enough to make a difference because I'm already making a difference as just a citizen in my community. So just advancing that.
Well, let me throw a question out to you, and I'm just thinking of these off the cuff here, so bear with me. And we're going to take some questions if people ask them in the comments also. Okay. And we want to keep it, pretty much related, obviously, to the school board. So let's go down that bullying pathway for a second. So it seems to me that, and maybe it's because of social media, we have instant access to information now and all that compared to, I know when Duke and I were younger, Zandra, I'm not sure how old you are, but I mean, there was bullying. Now. Okay. There was bullying that went on. Absolutely. I mean, I've told the story on the show before and all that. And I've said before that I hate the word bullying because it just grates on my nails, because sometimes it is overused, but I want to be clear. It absolutely does go on. Okay. What do you think is causing this, I'll say, spike in bullying, increase in bullying, however you want to put it? And where does the line fall between the school board and the parents in how to address this? What is the school board's role?
The school board's role is to get in the school to create policy, practice, and procedures. We don't micromanage the school, but you get in there, you talk to the teachers, you talk to the students, you get in the community, you talk to the parents, you surround yourself with the ins and outs of our school to see exactly what's going on and why. Now, I will say there is no one solution to bullying. And I will say bullying is a word that umbrellas a number of issues. Bullying is nothing new. We all know, and you can touch any generation. You can go 30 years, 40, whatever. Bullying is something that's been around forever. Now, having access to a platform that will expedite bullying and put it on a different level, that's what social media is. So we're fighting that battle now. But bullying is nothing new. And yes, some people will exhaust what bullying is, but to me, it's a matter of creating a climate at home and at school that makes clear and define what bullying is, how it sounds, how it looks, and not just presenting that to the students, but where we have spaces to sit down and discuss why that language is not okay, what that does to others, especially in middle school. Middle school, those are the hardest years because those young girls and boys are developing fast and dealing with a lot fast. So it's important. And at home, let's speak for myself, I'm intentional in what language I use in front of my kids. I don't allow them to watch certain things. I don't allow them to be around me when I'm having certain conversations because I don't want my perception of people and things to be theirs. We sit and have open conversations about things that happened at school and their opinions. And I'm quick to tell them, well, let's not use that word, or let's not say that. If, for example, Kaden talked about some girl, they call her Bigfoot at school. And he said, well, she laughs it off. And to her, that's okay. But I think it hurts her feelings. So I call her by her name. And I told him that's important for you to lead and be that example, because sometimes we will laugh stuff off, but it really hurts us on the inside. And I think a lot of us adults and kids together, we find things funny and that aren't funny. And oftentimes we laugh things off as a defense mechanism because we don't know how to go to our peer or whomever and say, hey, that's not funny. That hurts my feelings. So everybody plays a part in being the solution, and everybody plays a part in being the problem. When we don't discuss it and pretend that it's not happening and expect it to just go away, then we allow it to continue. So the best way is to address it, to start having those conversations, to just begin defining for us all, because everybody defines things differently, what bullying is and what bullying isn't. And what it may be for you, it may not be for the next person, but we want to make sure that we are sensitive to the needs of especially our young people, because they are not built tough like we are. And even as adults, we can still be conscious of what we say and how we say things.
Well, just a second, Duke. Let me go a little bit further down that rabbit hole, because I want to get your opinion on the zero tolerance policy. And let me set the stage here for a little bit. So you hadn't seen my boys in a long time, but in full disclosure, they were on a football team, and Darren was their coach and all that. So it's been a long time, but we have a rule around my house, all right? And we still have the rule, even though they're 20-something years old now. You don't start a fight, all right? But if you have to defend yourself or defend somebody that is being picked on, I got your back all the time. And literally, we had to go to the school more than once and do the whole meeting with the assistant principal, the psychiatrist, blah, blah, blah. You go on down the list. All right. But we have the zero tolerance policy in schools. So what is your opinion of zero tolerance policy?
Okay. I hate it. But I understand why it's in place. They're told to, and this was years ago when our oldest was in school, they were told if somebody hits you, you get in the fetal position and you do absolutely nothing. I don't know how we as human beings who fight or flight. Those are the two that we take. I don't see how you really expect young people who have been hit, embarrassed in front of their peers to take fetal position and do nothing, and why they should be punished. And that goes to we've kind of adopted ways where we would rather just take the students and push them out of the way and group them together and say, okay, well, here's the thing. You hit them, it's zero tolerance. Both of you will be written up and you have to go. Instead of sitting them down, having a discussion, and explaining to both of them, these are the consequences of your actions. You, the aggressor, approached them and hit them. So you will be punished for this reason, but we still have to deal with the psyche. Like, what brought you to this? Teach them that there are other options other than being physical, right? So having that discussion in front of them, but not punishing the child who was hit, because that sends a message that you can't defend yourself. They're not going to defend you. So what does our young people do? They feel they have no other option other than to self-harm, because some kids don't know how to go to their parents or won't go to their parents. And we know that. And that's when they fall into depression and some kids take their lives. I don't agree with zero tolerance. I think I get why it's in place, because we have to set boundaries, but we need to do more than just set boundaries. We have to start having conversations, because it's not like our young people just automatically know how to handle these situations. Even as adults, we don't know how to handle some of these situations. And if somebody came up to us and hit us, we're not going to just walk away and say, oh, well, I shouldn't have let them hit me.
Well, I can agree with that. Absolutely. Duke, did you have a question or comment or whatever?
Oh, absolutely. But I'm gonna, on that right there, you're running for a seat on the Bossier Parish School Board. In your opinion, has the Bossier Parish School Board effectively, or to all their ability, managed the bullying issue in the Bossier Parish school system to date?
No, I don't. And it's a lack of communication and transparency. Our school board has become too distant from the reality of what's going on in the schools. The only way you truly know what's going on is if you're talking to the ones who are in the classroom, the ones who are in the school. We don't do that. We don't talk to the parents. Not to say that that's the job of the school board, because that's a reach. Of course, that's teacher needs to talk to the parents. And if that's not resolved, then principal, and you follow that chain of command. But it's setting clear expectations as school board and say, okay, we can put zero tolerance on everything. But as we know, that just escalates bullying when we're not doing the work that is required to make sure that every school knows what the expectations are, that they are having those necessary conversations and paying attention and creating a safe space for students to report bullying without there being retaliation. Because there's times where a student goes to a teacher, and if the teacher doesn't believe them or finds it hard to believe or confronts them in front of their peers, and the kids run and tell whomever it is, then that just escalates things. So learning what is the proper way to protect our kids from bullying. And Bossier Parish School Board, not to say there's a lot that goes with being in education, and always related to me as a parent. It's hard enough with two kids. We have three, but two that are school age that are constantly bickering. And it's a constant conversation. It's constantly talking to them. I can't just put a note on the board and my kids follow that every day. I have to be consistent, and we are not a consistent system that continues to have necessary conversations, that continues to engage our teachers, our educators, our school employees, parents, and community, and create a whole climate that says, okay, this is what we're going to do about bullying. We're going to discuss what has happened at the hands of bullying, open and transparent about it, and not sweep it under the rug, because that you cannot heal what you don't reveal. We're going to be open and transparent and have these necessary conversations. And then we're going to begin to do the work at every school so that we can eventually and collectively put a stop to bullying as best we can in our schools.
Well, well, following up, I mean, I wanted to move to a second thing. The first thing that you said that, there's teachers leaving and, you've been involved and you talk to them and you kind of know. Last show we had, the, uh, professional pothole digger, Jeffrey Sadow. That's no slight, Jeffrey. That's just making fun. But, when I was preparing for that show, I was going through, you know, checking some numbers. And one of the things that I came across when I was looking at the legislative auditor's office, I was looking at it came up in one of my searches, which was a millage rate and revenue, listing of all of the school districts in the state of Louisiana. And to my surprise, I looked at the Bossier Parish school system. And there was only, of all of the school systems, there were 69. I'm sitting here, I have it pulled up. There were 69 of them. The millage rate for Bossier Parish was listed as the fourth highest in the state of Louisiana for all the school districts. So when you say teachers are leaving and all, and we're not, or maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, that we're not being effective, we hear too often it's always about money. Is it really about money, or is it about the actual process and the administration of it? Is that where the problem is? Because obviously in the state of Louisiana, there's enough money being thrown at education in Bossier Parish, but I don't know. I mean, what do you think about that?
Teachers can chime in, because I'm not going to pretend as if I know all of the reasons why our teachers are leaving. It's more than just money, and that's a matter of a misappropriation of fund. Yes, you can throw money at all kinds of things, but if you're not hitting where you need to be hitting, then it's pointless. But teachers are leaving because a lot of teachers have to work multiple jobs because they don't make enough. They're leaving because they feel their hands are tied, and going to school and having the passion to teach when you're not allowed to do that in your classroom, when you feel that you are restricted to the point of no return, they leave. Teachers feel that they are not supported by administration. They feel that they're not heard, and they feel that it's a bit too much. You have a lot of teachers that are looking for jobs now. I was talking to my friend last night who said this is a way for them to prevent themselves from going into the crazy home, because there's so much that our teachers see and want to say, but they can't. You talk about, I don't even know how to explain it, but they know that if they say something, they'll be retaliated against. And that's nothing new. So yes, money is an issue, because anybody who sits in a classroom, especially today, that would have to do the things that our teachers have to do at the pace that they have to do it, with the lack of support that they have to do it, you would understand why pay is necessary, because it's hard to get up early and go to school and work and do the best you can and go home and try to be mother, wife to your home. But you can't be that, because you have to pick up another job because you're not making enough. And keep in mind, we have single parent homes that are educators as well. So there are a number of reasons that need to be addressed. But I would say the main thing is our teachers feel that they can't teach the way they know is necessary to reach our young people, to truly educate them in a way that they will learn. They feel that what education is to them is not being implemented in our school system.
All right. So that is a good segue to a point I've been wanting to ask a pretty good while. And this is addressed to, all teachers who are listening or watching or commenting or whatever. So we all hear the horror stories every election cycle or every time that a millage renewal comes up. And look, I make no secret that I fought like hell against the tax increase, the 40% tax increase last time. But we've all heard the horror stories of teachers who are underpaid that also have to literally buy their own supplies for the schoolroom. And we hear this over. I mean, I've been hearing it since like I was a kid in high school or whatever. Why is that? How do we fix that? Why should a teacher have to come out of their pocket to provide supplies for an entire classroom? What is the deal? Why is it going on?
I can tell you, Rex, because it's more important to have AstroTurf. Xander don't have to answer that one. That's the reason why.
I'm trying to be nice to the
Education's
school
not the
board
priority.
for once.
It's athletics. I'm sorry. There, I said it. She doesn't have to say it.
Though I love the turf, I'm not gonna lie to you, and not just teachers feel that. I was talking to a bus driver who has been in the system for a long time, who feels that they should receive raises. And she herself said, we can give turf to these kids, but you can't provide pay to the educators and school staff who are caring for these kids more than anything. We as a state prioritize sports over education. When you're ranking 46th in K through 12 and 48th overall, clearly we need to value education more and push for quality education more. And there's a lot that plays into that, but I don't know. I think that.
Well, I'm gonna play gotcha here off of what you just said, because I read that statistic today. Actually, I had read that we were 49th, but 48th. That's good to hear that we moved up one level. But I know that historically we've been at 49 for a long time, and that makes me ask the question, because a lot of folks have tried to make some changes in education, and with programs of charter schools and the money follows the kid and all that. Where do you stand on that? Now, I asked your opponent, Eric Faulting, and we invited him multiple times on the show tonight. His personal, and people emailed me to say that they invited him as well. No response whatsoever. Now, I asked him at the Republican Parish Executive Committee where he stood on that, and his response to me was he had no idea what that meant. The money follows the kid, or the charters. He didn't understand all that. He didn't know what it meant. So I'm asking you, where do you stand on it? I mean, and do you know what it means?
To an extent, I'm not a fan of charter schools. I'm going to say that now, and I'll explain why. Education is what it is because a lot of people see it as a money grab. So you have charter schools and you have private schools, and we're creating all these different choices. The school system, public schools exist for a reason, because clearly we notice that there's an extreme need for a public school system in every state, right? Well, especially let's stick with Louisiana. So to me, what I see charter schools to be are just money grabs. They have not advanced education. They have not created a need for us to just run to charter schools and give up on public schools. I honestly believe if we would stop being like dogs chasing our tails and just take our public schools that are federally and state funded, that we have money to make the best and make it the best, we'll forget all about charter schools. Now, to each his own, do what you feel is necessary. I think that it's important for us to at least have conversations. And I will tell everybody, I'm not a knee-jerk reaction person. I love to research. I love to look at the statistics. I love to have necessary conversations with everybody across the board. But the right here and the right now, we have schools that are underserved, and we have dollars that are misappropriated. We have brand new schools that have opened up and have made it even harder to provide for the schools that are struggling the most. So those are the issues that need to be addressed. When you see students that are in 12th grade reading at a 6th grade level, when you see third graders reading at a kindergarten level, when you see kids struggling to keep up and they feel the need to be medicated because the pacer scale tells our teachers you have to teach all of this at this pace or you will be reprimanded. Those are the real issues that affect us every day. So I'm one that I want to address what's right in front of my face. I've watched my kids go from ones who love to sit down, that had structure, where it was clear and concise what was going on in the classroom, to me struggling to chase what app, platform, or whatever we were using today to help them with their homework. Those are the real issues that need to be addressed. And if we would stick to the guns of focusing on providing quality education to the schools that we are financially feeding right now, things will be more clear.
All right.
Is it possible to provide quality education with a student teacher ratio of 30+1? Is that possible?
Is it
Because
possible? Go ahead.
yeah, because that's my thing. That's my thing. I think the key to education is reducing the student teacher ratio. I've always believed that. I ran for the legislature, and that's what I believed. I believed it then. I still believe it today. And I think that's the key. But how is it that if we've got Bossier Parish spending the most amount of money of all districts in the state of Louisiana, and we can't do it here, we can't reduce our student teacher ratio to a manageable level? I've talked to a lot of teachers, and they say, you know what? The pay is not the biggest issue for me. It's the quantity of the students and being able to control. How can a teacher effectively educate 30 plus kids in a classroom? They can't do it. And I mean, if your son, let's say your son is not an athlete, or your daughter, or what, they're not an athlete, but they're really smart at math or really smart at science, shouldn't they have the ability to, say, go to a magnet school, or if they so choose, or should they be confined to where they geographically live? Should they be locked down? Shouldn't they have the choice to be able to move? Don't you think? If to
To
reach their full potential?
to answer that specifically, and I've gone to the extremes of homeschooling my daughter at a point in time because I felt she wasn't receiving the education that she needed individually because she deals with seizures and everything else. Okay. So yes, I believe that if your schools are not providing what is needed for your child, because I honestly believe every day that your child is not receiving quality education is a day lost. Every year is a year lost. So as a parent, I get it. Do what is necessary and take your child wherever they will receive quality education. But for someone who supports public schools wholeheartedly, I would love for our schools to compete. I would love for our schools to understand, because they do to an extent. I was at a school meeting 2 weeks ago with parents, Dr. Bourgeois and everybody else, and they talked about some of the tutoring programs and the issues with the tutoring programs, how there's a wait list. There's only 3 people that can be tutored at a time because they know that the ratio of teacher to student works best when you only have a few students. So if we can see that with these tutoring programs, clearly we understand that when the ratio is reduced, teacher to student, 1 to 15 or whatever, we know that you can reach more students in a way that they will truly grasp concepts, learn, and that it sticks and builds upon. Then it's possible. The question would be, why not? it would be something that our teachers and everybody has to hold themselves accountable. The parents who are not paying attention and getting involved, the teachers, which I get with teachers, but there has to be a point where teachers are bold enough to say enough is enough. We know that our students need to be educated and they're not given what is necessary. So what do we do? What can we do? The power is always in the people, but the people don't know. The people aren't engaged because, once again, our teachers feel if they say something, they'll be retaliated against. Our schools should provide quality education. It is possible when we sit down and have necessary conversations, but that goes to us forcing those conversations to be had, because a lot of times we know Bossier schools would rather be its own entity away from everything else, and they shut it down fast, which I get it.
I think you're a capitalist and you just don't know it, Rex.
No, I'm a Zandra, and you don't know.
All right. So I want to circle back to the financial side for a minute. Because, again, not to rehash the past, but back, when they tried the 40% tax increase, I think it was 2018, 2019, whatever it was.
And Rex, that makes me wonder if we wouldn't have been number one in taxes in the state had that passed. I think we
probably would have been more than number one, if that's even possible. But do you know, Zandra, when the lady that's the head or was head of the teachers union at the time literally almost had a stroke on a television interview? And when the school board really got pissed off at yours truly, do you know at what point during that whole battle that was? It was when we released the salaries of the school board members and the upper level management. And they went ballistic. As a matter of fact, and I'll say this live on the show, as a matter of fact, we had to threaten them with a lawsuit because they sent us the wrong numbers. And I would argue on purpose. It might have been a clerical error, but it was a big deal, and they went absolutely ballistic. That's why I still call her the head cheerleader up there. When we published all their salaries, they went absolutely nuts. Now, here's my question to you. Do you think that the Bossier Parish School Board is top-heavy? Because I've claimed that for a while.
I do, but I'm going to be realistic. Like I said, on the outside looking in, there's a lot of things that we don't know. And I did a public request for our finances last year because I'm constantly wanting to know. And I've looked at those salaries myself. I do believe we are top heavy. However, beyond that, there are several grants, dollars, funds all around that we received, and there's ways to do what is necessary to educate our kids and provide pay to our teachers, I believe, if we sit down and do some digging.
Yeah, okay, I would agree, because our point was never against the teachers. It was, wait a minute, before you son guns get up there and preach to us that, we got to vote this in or all the teachers are going to leave and they're all underpaid and all that, you're preaching from your high horse. And that was the problem.
Right.
All right. So, yeah, I appreciate your honesty.
Mm-hmm.
I do too. I got to tell you, that's refreshing, to hear you say that, because a lot of people feel that way. And I'm going to say this. I mean, I don't know that a lot of the changes that are things that we see happening today would be happening if we had effective management that wasn't looking out for just maintaining the status quo. And that's my gut feeling. I think that a lot of what we do today is just maintaining the status quo. And like you said, you quoted and cited the fact that we're 48th, and are we going to continue to keep doing the same thing, or are we going to change? I think we've got to change. And
we do.
I got to tell you, to me, I'm hearing you articulate conservative principles. I got to tell you, I mean, I'm
and let me say, politics play no role in education. And I'll break it down for you. Can you tell me who your child's principal? Are they Republican or Democrat?
couldn't tell
Their
you.
teacher, their counselor, the many people who work in central office. Can you tell me?
Well, the interesting thing is I have two kids in school that one goes to a Christian private school and one
Mm,
goes to a public school. And
hmm
that may make a lot of folks scratch their heads, but it's a personal decision that's, took place in our house. And they actually, and believe it or not, they are twins. So
Oh,
there is an interesting comparison contrast, and I actually have a perspective that a lot of people may or may not have regarding I'm a product of Halton High School, of this Bossier Parish public education system. But when I graduated in 1988, I can tell you it was a different system than it is today, and a lot of things have changed. And
yeah.
I'm not confident in the success of the current Bossier Parish school system, and it has nothing to do with the individual teachers. It has to do with the management of the system, and that certainly falls on administration and clearly on administration. Don't get me wrong; there's some good people, but I think that a too big to fail type scenario is here, and the system is looking out for itself. I do.
Sad to say it is. And I'll say it goes back to us holding people accountable. It's when we don't make clear that if your job is to educate, let's educate. Let's make sure that we're providing quality education to our students and that we are allowing the educators to do their job. Does there need to be change? Absolutely. But I'm torn between the two because I was an advocate for Common Core curriculum. I was like, I love Common Core, the idea of Common Core. We did not implement it properly. We were not ready for it. We tried to take the cheap way in, out, through, and around it, which made things even more complicated. And we were not, once again, consistent with Common Core. And we didn't have those necessary conversations with teachers and say, is this a good idea? Do you think that this New York standard curriculum will work for our Louisiana kids? Is it too broad? And I think that is what we're seeing. We are providing a totally different language to our kids who have never seen it, don't speak it, and don't comprehend it at all. And instead of reaching our kids one step at a time, our system and those powers that be have crammed certain things down the throats of our teachers and are forcing them to just roll with it. And for the educator who is one that knows better, has seen better, believes greater than that, then they leave and they do, what is needed. I think that we can make improvements. I think that we have a problem with addition. Instead of adding to the things that work, we'd rather tear it all down and start anew. And that's what we did, which was horrible. We should have kept the things that worked, removed the things that didn't, and built on those things, because that's what education is. But a lot of these programs and platforms that we use, the teachers it's presented to them last minute. They don't have enough time to train on it. And keep it in mind that if we are becoming a technological system, not everybody is tech savvy. So if you're not having workshops for parents, if you're not having workshops for teachers that are effective, then you are providing a disservice, not only to the community and the students, but especially to the teachers whose job depends on them to educate and do well on scores and everything else. And don't get me started on that, because I think that we need to just focus on education and not standardized testing, but that's a whole nother battle.
It is. And I'd like to remind all of our viewers out there that LAB, that bastion of conservative principles, is one of the groups that helped usher in Common Core into the state of Louisiana, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely they are. Now, I think you said you were a supporter of Common Core, in which you and I would have to part ways on that because I would not be in favor of that. But if you said that you would be in favor of starting over and teaching all of our kids with the New England primer, then you and I would be on the same page. But I don't think you're probably going to say that.
No, and I'll be specific. I like the fact that my son, because my daughter is 15, my son is now 13. So in kindergarten, I knew that Caden loved math. Before he got into kindergarten, we would have pennies, dimes, nickels all throughout the house trailed where he would have to count. Like we broke it down. Numbers were always a thing for him. Now, Common Core provided a way for them to start building and truly understanding what algebra was, knowing what the language was, knowing what a higher level of math and everything else was, because once you start, and it's just like, okay, a baby, you don't have to sit down with a baby and teach them what language is. They hear it and they learn it. So clearly, if you present it to them and it is a constant, they will learn it. I love that Common Core started them early on those hard concepts so that by the time they really needed it in middle school and high school, it was second nature to them. The idea of Common Core is what I like.
One question. Look. Obviously, those should be the things that we have a debate about when we talk about school board races and things. Is about specifically about education. Jimmy Richardson said in the comments, CRT question mark.
Okay.
But I want to. I'm not going to ask. I want to. You can make a comment on CRT there for a second, but the one I want to talk about is COVID, because the school board really put the vac the vac stuff and the mask mandates, and me and Rex, we did a show where it was almost dedicated just to showing and proving that masks don't work. I mean, for this, we said it before the science really got out there and said it, but we did the background on it because um, just my background in the fire service, I can tell you that it didn't work. But we showed it, and we showed. I don't remember the details of the show. I'd have to go back and pull it. But the school board wholeheartedly went all on board with all of these. Everybody's staying at home, and as we're seeing now, the science is coming out and showing that a lot of us were led down the wrong roads. And school board members today would say, you know what? That's what the doctors were telling us at the time, and that's what we went with. But they had the opportunity to do a little bit digging more and maybe cut to the meat of it. Would you have been any different than them? Would would you have dug a little more, and would you have taken a different tack? Or if today, even today, right now, if you were posed with the question of, okay, we need to do mandatory lockdown, shut down school, mandatory masks, contact tracing, all that stuff, would you be in favor of that even today?
I'll say hindsight is 2020, right?
Right.
Right. No pun intended. But just like polio, flu, common cold, everything else, you don't know what you know until you know. And it is always best to err on the side of caution. Everybody had an opinion. Everybody had their own suggestions, what they would do, to each his own. But me personally, considering people close to me lost their lives and are still dealing with health issues because of COVID, I was one who spoke on it and said, let your decision be well researched and based on as much science as we know. Everything that we see today started with us learning what would work and what wouldn't. So there's a lot that we had to learn. There's a lot that we have learned. And I don't know. And that goes back to valuing education. And it's okay to err on the side of caution until you know better. It is impossible to please everybody. You can't. That's why you have to play both sides. Our school system consists of people of all ideologies, faiths, beliefs, and everything else. But as a school system, we have to be structured and we have to do what is best, especially when it comes to health. And I even spoke at one of the school board meetings. I said, when you have parents who will send their child to school even for flu and strep, yeah, we need to take some precautions. We need to err on the side of caution as best we can. Forever, absolutely not. And we can even go deeper into that. While COVID, because of COVID, and we saw there are a lot of gaps because of COVID, learning and social, emotional, and all. But what we should have done was been more proactive and not reactive. We reacted to what we saw in the news. We reacted to what everybody was saying and what everybody thought, instead of, and I'm a godly person to the core, instead of caring for the least of those. The walk of Christ is doing for everybody because you take on the burden of others. Even if you don't agree, and even when you do agree, you err on the side of caution, which is in love of one another for your neighbors, right? So I think that there's a lot that we learned. I thank God that we are out of it and we are still, in a sense, dealing with it, but we are better on the other side of it. And I think that we all can be honest and say, we learned a lot from 2020 and 2021, and that it is impossible to please everybody. Nobody got it right all the time. Nobody got it wrong all the time, but we learned a lot.
Well, I would only add one point, and Rex, I'll shut up and let you chime in after. I'm sorry. You know, I hope I am wrong on this, and I hope that whoever made this statistic and the scientists that did this study and the estimate that they gave, I hope and pray that they are wrong. You know, there's a lot of things are coming true now that we all went out there on a limb, and a lot of people, went out there because the people who with the PhD said this is what it should be or what have you. But I saw a statistic from a study that said within the next 8 to 10 years that I think 80% of the people that got the vax are going to be dead. And I hope that's not true, but I don't think we're done with it. And that's the reason I ask you that question, because I don't think it's something that we're going to be finished with. I think it may have a different flavor. It may have a different color. It may have a different description, whatever. But I don't think we're done with those type of problems coming in the near future. And whoever is in these elected positions, not just a school board, I think in city government in Bossier City, the parish, you're going to have decisions that you're going to have to make. And I'm scared for our future, for especially for the people who are making decisions. And I wish that our elected officials would make more decisions independently of what they are being told, by so-called professionals, that they have a mind of their own and they let their gut lead them, and they do what their heart and their gut tells them. Something tells me you're that kind of person. I got that feeling about you.
I will say God does not give us a spirit of fear. So I don't, fear is one thing that is just an opportunity for me to push my faith and learn more. Let's just say that. But yes, if we were more transparent as a school system, if we were more open and allowed open discussion just for the sake of discussion, and assured people, look, I know you may agree, you may disagree, but this is what we need to do, because once again, education is falling short, and because our students are becoming more and more lost, or whatever the case may be. Communication rules the nation. I think had we communicated better, which is kind of impossible because you're learning along the way, but had we been more transparent and open to the best of their ability that they could, maybe it would have made things better. And I mean, it's a virus, it mutates, of course, but we can't live in fear. But we are, like the Bible says, oftentimes destroyed by lack of knowledge. It is important that we constantly educate ourselves, and learn from our mistakes.
So segueing into that, and we'll, I don't know, I don't even know what time it is, about 9:15 now. What are your views on religion in schools? Specifically, let's use, something that's fairly famous here in Bossier, prayer in schools. And I'm keeping that real general, but what are your viewpoints on how that dynamic should work in the school system?
My kids pray in school. I don't, God is not a symbol, and God doesn't need an invitation. Prayer doesn't need an invitation. Now, God is not the author of confusion. And Jesus was one that walked the streets and didn't beg people to come. You either come or you don't. So God doesn't need people to battle for God's sake. Everybody has their own level of who God is and who God isn't. I'm confident in who God is to me, and that's what I can control. So when God is within me and God is what's taught at home, we read, we study, we do what is necessary, we go to church, and I teach my kids what their faith should be, and they're going to have to adopt that on their own the older they get. But considering God is within them, when they are in the school, God is in the school. It's not a symbol that you can just put up and there it is at the school. I think that we make it more complicated than it needs to be. I think that us battling religion in the school or out of the school is just, and I get it, but I think it's more complicated than it needs to be. You don't need an invitation to pray, but you can't force other people to believe what you believe. And God is the same way. God is not a puppet master. It is your choice to believe or not to. So, I mean, my dad is a pastor, and I'm one who is deep in my word all the time. And I honestly believe that you can't force people to God, and God doesn't need us to.
And so, all in pun intended, let me play devil's advocate here for a second. All right, so how does that dynamic work with people of other faiths, whether we agree with it or not? How does that dynamic work with Muslims or some of these, made up religions that people do the flying spaghetti monster crap? How does that dynamic work? Yeah, it's real. It's real.
You got to show that. I ain't never seen that, I guess.
Well, the flying spaghetti monster is basically made up by people who are anti-Christian. So let's just put it that way. All right, but still, one person's religion is another person's whatever. So how does that dynamic work? And let's just use Muslims. We'll probably get a bunch of hate mail or whatever, but let's just use Muslims. What if they want to, and forgive me if I'm saying this wrong to any of the Muslims out there or whatever, but what if they want to do their prayer to Allah at the end of the day where they put their rug down or whatever? How do you feel that dynamic in our country should work as well?
I don't, does that happen? Is that happening in our schools? Because I don't think they do. And my kids don't get down. Prayer is not for me. And again, that's not my religion. And nobody's religion can be forced on anybody because it's something that you accept for yourself, right? And we all know that to be baptized, you have to accept Christ within your heart yourself. So that is a choice that you make. I don't think that that's happening in our schools. If it is, point me in that direction. I think that they do their own things at a specific time. And the same for my kids. My kids don't get on their knees and go to praying. Prayer is meditation. Prayer is something that they can do at any time without anybody knowing, because that's what prayer is.
Good enough.
Well, Zandra, we are gracious to you for coming on the show. And I think you will serve that district well. And I think you would serve the parish well if you got in that seat. I mean, I like what I've heard from you. I am first time, conversing with you. I got to tell you, I found that I agreed with you more than I disagreed with you. I think maybe the only thing that I heard that I may have disagreed with you maybe on was Common Core. And I think that's it.
And that's Go ahead. I'm sorry, Rick.
Oh no, that's
Yeah,
fine. I was just going to say it's refreshing to me, even though if we have to look at labels behind names, we might consider ourselves opposites as far as politics goes in the mainstream deal. But I got to say, I agree with you at like Duke more than I disagree, and it's refreshing to hear somebody give a straight answer and not waver about
you
it.
better believe it.
Well, that's one thing I will never do because, again, and I will say education is vital. It is so important. You talk about the state of our economy, it is directly tied to quality education or not. So if we truly care about our city, if we truly care about this parish, we truly care about our state, we will get serious about who we elect all across the board because these representatives, we keep going against our own personal interests and we have to point the finger at ourselves, especially when it comes to Bossier School Board. We have people on the board that have sat for far too long and that are creating their own you talk about a good old boy system. That's a good old boy system in itself. And it's parallel to city council and everything else. How do you break that up? You put people in there who are going to do the job. Our system is failing because we are not electing people who are going to do what is necessary, say what is necessary, and not bend to the rule of thumb of status quo, but people who are passionate and who are consistent in doing what is necessary for our young people to be viable citizens, because that is so necessary. When we provide them what is needed for them individually, when it comes to arts, quality education, getting off these computers and truly doing work that really works, we won't have students that are disengaged and bored. We'll have students who want to come to school because they feel that their purpose is being fulfilled in the classroom, that they are being seen and heard when we're having these discussions with them and asking, are they okay? And teaching them and ways to deal with bullying and creating a climate that is inclusive, that is welcoming and inviting for our teachers, our employees, for bus drivers, and everybody else. We should feel like a family. And to me, we used to. Bossier Schools is one that I hold to high standards because I'm a product of Bossier Schools. I want our schools to be the best, but that doesn't just happen by saying our schools are the best or posting pictures, videos, or whomever. We have to do the work. We have to put people in these positions who are bold enough and strong enough to do the work, who don't mind having the necessary conversations, who doesn't mind constructive criticism, because that is how we grow and that is how we learn, and who doesn't mind going back to the basics and getting back to the core of really teaching our kids how to sound out. When Caden was in third grade and they said they were no longer doing vocabulary, they were no longer doing spelling words, that was a problem for me. So me and a parent, Tumanello, who was the principal at Sun City, we invited everybody from the curriculum department. I emailed them personally and the superintendent, Scott Smith at the time, and told them, come out and explain to the teachers and the parents what this new tier 1 only material is and why these teachers are having old materials stripped from their classroom and told they can only do tier 1. So it's going to require the people being engaged and involved more so that we can all work together to better help our young people and better help our community, which does nothing but feed and grow our economy.
I couldn't say it any better. As a matter of fact, I can think of somebody's job at the school board that you should take right now. It might involve some pom-poms and cheerleading a little bit, but you would be absolutely wonderful at her job, and she gets paid about $80-something thousand, $90-something thousand a year. But I won't mention any names. All right.
I got one word, secundus.
I don't know, but we have a lot of work to do, and the committees that I've been working on is trying to engage parents more and open our schools. Even at Parkway, the parent meetings that we're having, that was my idea. I think it's important that we get PTO, PTA, whatever you want to call it, back into our schools, because you can take the load off teachers by having parents come in, and then parents can truly see what is going on, because our young people know how to play us too. They do. When there is a divide, and I blame Bossier Schools for that. When Scott Smith said no homework, and we slowly started to push parents out, our students started to see, okay, well, the teachers don't communicate with our parents. Our parents don't know what we're doing anyway. So I can get away with not doing this work. I can get away with misbehaving. I can get away with not studying. We have to get back to the core of quality education, from the home to the school and from the school to the home.
Well, I don't know if Duke, if you've got anything else, but Zandra, you're welcome to come on back to the show whether you win or not. If you do win, don't forget about us. But even if you don't, you're welcome to come back on anytime if you got an issue or there's something in the community or South Bossier or whatever you want to talk about. Yes. Hey, reach out to us and come on.
I sure will, because I'm consistent in doing this work with a title or not, because our young people need us to. Our teachers need us to. If we want quality educators to stay in the classroom, we have to do what is necessary for them to want to and feel valued to be in the classrooms.
Right. All right. You got anything else on
the
school board, Mr. Lowry?
No, sir. Thank you, Zandra, for coming on. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Y'all have a good night.
All right. Good night. Tell Darren I said hello.
I will. Good night.
All right. Good night.
All
right. Okay. We have our guest. Brian, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. I can hear both of you. Great.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. We got good audio and good video now. That always makes it a little bit better. So, Brian, why don't we set it up like this? You had reached out to us and wanted to communicate with us and, possibly come on the show or at least chat with us. So why don't you tell us kind of what prompted you to, reach out to us and have a chat with us?
Sure. Well, first of all, I appreciate you guys letting me come on. I've been very gracious. And Rex, I did not know that your father had passed away. I talked to you earlier today, and so my condolences to you. I apologize for not knowing that in advance, but I just appreciate you guys having me on the show. The main thing here is I've been quiet. I was named in the previous lawsuit, and when I mean named, I'm not named as a defendant or whatever. It just brings up my name and my company name. And it's very easy to stay silent about that kind of thing. It's much easier to stay silent than it is to speak up sometimes. But now that this new lawsuit is out, I just reached out to y'all because I wanted to make sure that you heard another side. And what I mean by that is the numbers that I'm named in. I think it's like 68 to 79, somewhere in there. I can speak to those things, and I won't speak to other things because I'm not going to speak to something I'm not 100%, informed about. But on those things, I can speak to them, and I can just say that, really, in a nutshell, it's patently false. The accusations that are being leveled, they're not being leveled towards me; they're being leveled towards Brad Jerkovich and the church. But obviously, I'm the horse's mouth here, right? I'm the one that can speak to the situation, and that's why I thought it important to reach out to y'all.
Yeah, Brian, so I've got it up on the screen so folks can take a look at the lawsuit. I think we either posted it or most people can find it online. If not, we'll post it after the show. So just wanted to point that out. Dude, go ahead.
Hey, Brian, I wanted to ask you, I mean, just for clarity's sake, for everybody watching the show, has anyone asked you to speak to us? I mean, does anyone know you're speaking to us?
Yeah, no, that was on purpose. I did not ask for permission or, bring it up because I wasn't sure what the response was going to be. I'm not a staff member at First Bossier, but I do work with First Bossier, and I am kind of putting it on the line a little bit tonight. But I was not asked to come on here by anyone. Brad Jerkovich or anybody that's known on the staff is aware or has asked me to do this. I'm coming on my own, right? I'm my own man, and it names me here. And I guess I should come with a disclaimer of I'm not here to speak on behalf of First Bossier or anyone named in the suit. only to the items that pertain to me.
So reading the first suit and then reading this amended petition, um, it sounds to me, just to put it in real simple terms for the folks out there that haven't actually read it, it seems to me that they're insinuating in this suit that, you know, Brad, and again, I know I'm greatly simplifying it, that Brad was basically just writing you checks for, X amount of dollars or paying you X amount of dollars. And they kind of, it's like they're saying y'all are trying to launder the money. I mean, they don't say that in the suit, but it kind of leans that way. I mean, and I've got a question for you. So why do you think they're, well, for lack of a better term, picking on you? I mean, you were in the first suit and now you're in this one. Have you given any thought to maybe why?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I can't speak to people's intentions, right? I don't know these people. I don't know most of these people. I may have met a few of them here and there, but I will say that it does seem to be the overarching theme here. The accusation that they're making is, especially where I'm named here, is that Pastor Brad Jerkovich is paying my company money to increase his influence in what's called the Conservative Baptist Network. And you can start at the beginning, and he's basically saying, it's making this accusation that he's funneling money to his friends. And I don't think it's so much that it's me as much as they're trying to prove that he's doing something wrong. And it's just not there. I'll give you an example here. Let's speak to the timeline. The Conservative Baptist Network, I believe, was founded somewhere around COVID 2020, right? I'm not a part of the CBN. I'm not on the steering committee. I've not done any work for the CBN. I've never been to a CBN function. I've never been asked by Brad Jerkovich to do anything for the Conservative Baptist Network. And yet they seem to think that my tithes, and in fact, they label that on here. They say that on there, that my tie to Brad Jerkovich is a friend of the CBN. My relationship with First Bossier began as a result of a student pastor named Ian Dunaway in like September, October of 2018. He asked me, he's asked me as he's gone to different churches to do that staff role, to do some work for him. I do print and graphic design and communications and consulting. So that was the beginning of the relationship. I didn't have a relationship with Brad prior to that. I didn't know who Brad was. I had to remind Brad who I was, and he kind of knew who I was. But my first face-to-face with Brad was in April of 2019, a whole year before that CBN thing started. The timeline's wrong. The timeline's false. The accusation is wrong. And forgive me, I need a cough drop myself here.
So you started work around 2019 for First Church?
2018. I started doing contract work for them in 2018, and then I came on a retainer basis in March of 2019.
And you had never had any, professional dealings or any dealings with Brad Jerkovich actually prior to that? You'd had nothing.
No, the only time that I met Brad was we had both gone to a 25th anniversary for Ronnie Floyd up in Northwest Arkansas. That was my first time meeting him, and I took a photo of him and his wife because I was a photographer that night. Other than that, I had never had a deal with him at all.
So in the suit, and let me go back to the first one and just borrow from it from a little bit. So they basically claimed in the first petition that you were paid $146,000 over 2 years, like $8,000 for travel, $30,000 for this, $20,000 in credit card payments. Anyway, and in this amended petition, they didn't list any of the amounts, I don't think. So can you maybe describe for everybody what type of work that you did for First Bossier and why, some of these amounts may or may not actually be as much as they seem. Was this just money that he paid you, or was this for printed stuff? Was this for clothes?
This was for work, for print material. One of the things that I do with my clients is if I'm on a monthly retainer for them, basically doing graphic design, right, or communications consulting, or whatever, I make available wholesale pricing for print. And I'll give you an example of that. A banner that you might order to put here. I'm at Starbucks right now, but a banner that you might put here, 15 feet tall and 5 foot wide, will cost you around $650 retail. Wholesale will cost you about $90, right? So the whole thing is I try to save churches money as I work with them by saving them money on print media while also offering them a service that they're then paying me for. So no, there was never any money that was just given to me. I did work for them, and I am their in-house, if you will, even though I'm not there. I'm in Arkansas, graphic designer and communications guy. Although I'm not on staff, I'm a W-9 employee. The numbers were not accurate. I'm assuming that's why they weren't listed in the second suit. But one thing, I mentioned this in the pre-interview, I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that when you see a filing such as this one in black and white, people assume that it's all facts, right? In fact, in that lawsuit, somewhere in there, it says statement of facts. And yet, every single one of those numbers, like number 69, it starts with on information and belief. And really, as I talked to an attorney, because there were all these false statements being made about me, I wanted to know, hey, can I pursue some sort of libel here? What do I need to do? What my attorney told me is you can pretty much say whatever you want about a person as long as you begin it with upon information and belief. What it basically is saying is we think that maybe, right? And again, I'm not aiming this toward anybody in particular. I'm just saying the information in here that's saying upon information and belief that Jerkovich caused First Exposure to make payments to Brian Armas. That's not a fact. That's an assumption, right? And I know because that last statement, it says, because it is believed that Mr. Armas is connected to Dr. Jerkovich via the CBN, suggests that there was a diversion of funds to enhance Dr. Jerkovich's influence in the CBN. I have zero influence in the CBN. I've done nothing but, just graphic work and that kind of thing. And it's been a simple exchange. I think they're kind of grasping at straws and trying to make a case that's simply not there. And that's why I think it's important to speak up.
Okay, so to clarify, I think you do things kind of similar to what I do, in the IT support that I do, because one of the questions is, why does he need to be on a retainer? Is that common? So I'll kind of address that for a second and then let you address it, Brian. Actually, it is fairly common. It depends on the church size. It depends on our small business size, and depends on the deal with the customer. But in my case, I do have some customers that are on retainers. I don't have any churches that are, but I do have some of my small business clients that are on retainers. So, Brian, would you mind kind of educating us or
Sure.
educating the viewers a little bit on how that works?
Yeah, I don't work exclusively with churches. I do a lot of nonprofits as well. It's what I cut my teeth on. I've been in communications for 20 years within churches and nonprofits. But basically, I have an hourly rate. And that hourly rate, has a minimum of 1 hour, right? So if First Exposure was to call me for every little thing and I begin to, do that hourly rate, it would be much more than if they said, look, we're doing this amount of work. Can we work together to basically guarantee you this much money per month if we can do, if you'll lower that hourly rate? And it lowers it by about 2/3. Right, that creates a situation where it ebbs and flows. Around Easter and fall, my workload's going to go up. And that's just why I don't charge them anymore for that. That's just the way it is. So that's why we do it on retainer. It's kind of like leveling your electric bill. You know what I mean? But it's for all intents and purposes, I'm a I put in full time hours at Bossier, attend all those meetings, and also come down and visit with the staff there every several weeks, as much as I'm able. But yeah, retainers is pretty common in our industry.
All right, and just to
Well,
clarify, and I know that you said that the numbers in the first one, are not accurate. I'm not going to ask you the exact amounts because, if you know those, you may not want to reveal them. That's fine too. But was not all of that is just for your consulting services? Did some of that include products or services or other things as well? Or can you
Yeah,
clue
and
us
they
in on that?
yeah, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I don't want to be real specific here, but because I don't want to open a can of worms. But
Right.
they even mentioned that, right? Well, we don't really know. Some of this is print stuff or T-shirts or that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. But if I'm paying $90 for a banner wholesale, I'm not making any money on that. But that number's still getting added to the tally. I think
Right.
that's the way it worked. I know that the numbers didn't add up according to my wife. She's like, that'd been nice, but
Yeah. Okay. Duke, did
well,
you have a question?
well, oh yeah. Well, Brian, so like, so you haven't had I mean, it's articulated in this suit that you had a relationship with, Pastor Jurgovich, and you're basically articulating that, hey, look, you do this thing for a living. You were solicited to come and do this because you do it for a lot of churches, and you know I think I believe I'm listening. I think you can understand why people would have questions. I'm playing devil's advocate here a little bit. I think you can understand why people would have questions, about maybe some of the things that have went forward. There was information that was shared with us regarding Paige Patterson and the Sandy Creek, thing and all that. And, some folks, do you think the questions regarding money and whether or not monies from First Bossier went to some of those things, are those legitimate questions? Do you think maybe should people of the church, is that a legitimate answer that people would want?
well, I mean, again, I can't speak to anything outside of what officially. I'll give you my opinion, but I want to make sure it's just that. Look, because I know that what's listed here with my name attached to it is wholesale inaccurate, right? I mean, it's really what they're talking about is intent here. The mode of the intent here was to do this, and it is not the case. And I'll be glad to say that in front of a judge if I get the opportunity to under oath. Um, it does make me question everything in that suit, and I think it ought to make everybody question that, right? Um, I want to be careful with my colorful conversation here, but
Of
if
course.
you knew that there was just a little bit of arsenic in a big batch of brownies, let me put it that way, you wouldn't trust the whole batch. And so I making connections that may or may not be there. That's what I feel like this suit is trying to do. And as it pertains to my items here, I can say confidently that it's not true. So I would doubt all of
Well,
it.
well, I know that you're speaking. I mean, and you have been crystal clear, to what you're named in and your involvement, and and I appreciate that. I mean, look, I appreciate your willingness to come on the show and to talk about the subject matter. I mean, because I got to tell you, very few folks would be willing to step up here to the plate on video and talk about the subject matter. And I got to tell you, my hat's off to you. I mean, I think, like you said earlier, pre-show, we talked a little bit about when we first talked to you, and that we believe. I mean, we articulated that Rex and I believe that you know if it's the truth, let's put it out in the light, and if it's untrue, let's put it out in the light. Either way, the light is the disinfectant, and let's let the light do the work on it either way. And that's what we try
Right.
to do.
Well,
And I,
that's a Christian principle, right? I mean, that's what we talked about, or what we always talk about in the Christian faith is John 3:19-21 talks about that the light entered the world, and men hated the light because they loved the darkness for fear that their deeds would be exposed. But those of us who walk in the light, uh, practice the truth. We walk in the light so that it can be seen that our deeds have been wrought in God. And so, yeah, I think we ought to be able to come on a show like this and say, no, you guys are going to talk about it. So I don't mind telling you facts here, and shine some light on it so that you're not just seeing one side of the story, right? Um, I think that's dialogue rather than just a one-sided beating.
So I'm gonna kind of deviate just a little bit here because item number 78. Let me pull it up on the screen. Item number 78 says, because it is believed that Mr. Armas is connected to Dr. Jerkovich via the CBN, suggests that Dr. Jerkovich's diversion of FBB funds, that's an interesting choice of words, to Mr. Armas through Mr. Armas's companies was done to enhance Dr. Jerkovich's influence in the CBN. So, can you explain, for the viewers or whatever, your relationship, if any, with the CBN? I mean, what they're alluding to in the suit is they're rerouting money so it can flow through you and get over to the CBN. Can you explain what your relationship is?
Yeah, I have no relation to the CBN. I'm not part of the network. I'm not on the steering committee. All that information, I think, is public or on websites. Again, I've never been asked to do any work for that. Brad certainly could have asked me to, look at something, never did. Now, I will say that I go to Southern Baptist Convention. I try to go every year. It usually ends up being about every second or third year, because that's a big part of what I do, a big part of my network, right? And I certainly agree with some of what the CBN I've heard them say, as far as, which is really at the crux of all of this, in my opinion. And if you don't know what the CBN is, it's an effort within Southern Baptist Life to correct liberal drift within the church, and we're seeing that everywhere. But between cancel culture and wokeism, right, especially in the political spectrum, we're seeing now that really come out in the church. I'm not a woke guy, and that's a tough thing for a brown dude to, you know what I mean, to step up and say. But the reason I'm not doesn't have anything to do with politics. In the church, while everything is politicized, it can be politicized. In the church, it's really a gospel conversation, right? It's not that Rex or Duke, that you and I need to be reconciled to each other through the effort of some sort of social justice dialogue, because you are a culprit because you're white and I'm a victim because I'm brown, right? Really, it's a gospel conversation, because anything that moves the sinner, which we all are, away from being culprits towards being victims is antithetical to the gospel, right? The gospel states that we all fall short of the glory of God, and thus in need of salvation through the agency of Christ. And because of that, if I have peace with God, that message of reconciliation, then you and I can have peace with one another. That's the message of reconciliation. And this social justice, wokeism stuff, it's another gospel. It's not the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so that's why there's such a push within Christian circles and Baptist life to correct that. That said, I've never been to an event. I've never been a part of that, but I do very much believe the same as I think most Southern Baptists do, in what the CBN has done. But I don't know. Y'all feel free to ask any questions that are very direct, and I'll be happy to answer them.
Well, I've got a couple. I mean, and look, I appreciate your openness, and okay, this is going to be a curveball. Are you ready? Look, you know what? I I think, we talked a little bit before the show, and I think the reason why we kind of hit it off a little bit because we are on the same page. I don't care. You can freaking ask me any question. I'm going to tell you what I think. And I think you're the same way. So I'm going to throw this curveball at you. So if the Conservative Baptist Network and what you think, you said you think what this is all about is, kind of the wokeism thing, right? And I don't want to put words in your mouth. If that's not, what your belief is, say it's not what it is, and I'm going to stop. But I and I I think maybe it is. I would pose this question. You're not going to know this kind of Rex will know it. But if that's the case, if this is about wokeism, then why has, and I'm going to say this, and I hope you're not offended by it, but walk on water Mike Johnson not standing with Pastor Brad Jerkovich? Why has he abandoned him, in my opinion?
Yeah, I don't have a relationship with Mike Johnson. I can't speak to anything about Mike Johnson. I met him once, so man, I can't speak to that. All I can, you know, I want to be
And
real
the
careful with my
reason
opinions.
the reason I say that, and I understand that, I respect that. Again, I threw you a curveball. Again, you know, I don't feel like that, and I've articulated why previously, but I don't feel like that all Christians stand up for all Christian principles. We should all walk in the light. We should say what we believe. We should be straightforward. But obviously, we're not all that way. Obviously, a lot of us have other um, interests. We have other reasons that we do things, and I'm trying to figure out why we have this dissension here in, Bossier. You're not from Bossier originally, but we have this dissension here. You've been drug into the middle of it, and you've been, according to you, um, and I only say that to be fair, that you've been described as being a part of something that you say and you articulate that you are not. I mean, but shouldn't we all be standing up for each other? But yet we don't.
Yeah, I think it's easy to stay quiet, right? It's easy to not stand up and look. Just I'm doing nothing other than saying, "Hey, man, these numbers that I'm listed in, this is he's not channeling anything to me for CBN at all. I had nothing to do with that." And yet, I just discovered the comment section. By the way, I didn't know how to do that with viewing the comments in the show. And so there's comments here. Was your trip to CBN paid for by First Bossier? Right. That's the immediate response is uh, well, not pessimistic. Well, just I guess you could say pessimistic. Oh, I bet his trip was paid for by the CBN or whatever. You put yourself you put a target on your back when you stand up, and I think that's the thing is that I'm not speaking about anybody other than myself. Up until this morning when I got your message back, I was actually thinking maybe I shouldn't do this, right? It'd be far easier for me to be here in Arkansas and just do my thing and stay out of it. But when there's lies out there that you can correct, I think we all, as humans, and especially as Christians, have a duty to stand up and go, "No, sir, that's false." And since I mentioned that question, and I see it now, I'll go ahead and answer that. Was your trip to CBN paid for by First Bossier? No, they've never paid for a trip for me to do any. I don't know what trip to be CBN would be. I've gone to convention several times since I've been helping First Bossier. They've never paid me a dime to go to convention or anything related to the CBN.
All right, so let me ask a question that was, and forgive me, viewers, it's up in the comments somewhere, but I don't see who asked it first. Okay, so the comments are kind of going nuts because you are listed, you may not know, you are listed on First Bossier's website staff page as communications and graphics. So I think now correct me if I'm wrong, I think you said earlier that you are basically a paid third-party guy involved in, communications and graphic design and all
Sure.
that. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, I'm a member of the team at First Bossier, just like a volunteer would be a member of a team, may not be paid, or you may have some paid staff on there. But I do consider myself a member of that team, and I interact with the staff on a daily basis, all day. I keep office hours with First Exposure, or make myself available during those office hours. But, as you know, and we'll get in the weeds here, but the difference between a W-9 employee and a W-2 employee is that a W-2 employee, you get to tell what they do and, throughout the day, and a W-9, it doesn't work that way. Obviously, I have other clients, and that's the way to keep it honest. I have been on staff before full-time at different churches, and I don't think I'll ever do that again unless the Lord really makes that clear.
All right, so let me take that and kind of run with it just a little bit. So, to clarify, are you a member of First Exposure, or, you don't have to say specifically where you live, but, where do you live and go to
I live in
church?
I live in Northwest Arkansas. I go to Baptist Church here.
Okay. So you're not a
I'm
member
not,
of First Exposure, to clarify for everybody in the comments.
I'm a member of one church, and I work with several churches,
Right.
but I still am accountable and a member of a church here in Arkansas.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, go ahead, Duke. I'm going to scroll through some comments.
Well, look, Brian, I had one that somebody messaged me and they hit me with a question. I mean, I'm assuming they know who you are. Maybe they don't know who you are. And this will be a little bit of a curveball. But Ronnie
That's okay.
Floyd, they question that they posed to me, they said that, this is where, Brian met Jerkovich was at Ronnie Floyd's church. And, a lot of folks may not realize it or not. Ronnie Floyd was at one time, I think the president of the Southern Baptist Convention, and he ended up, I think, resigning. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, because I don't know the history. I'm reading here that he resigned, and it was over some of the sexual abuse, a sexual abuse inquiry. And I think those types of inquiries are still, that was a big subject of discussion at the recent Southern Baptist Convention.
Yeah.
What would be your
I can
comment
clarify
there?
that timeline. Yeah. So I worked at Cross Church from 2004 to 2011. Okay. When Ronnie Floyd was the pastor there. Brad Jerkovich worked there, I don't know when, maybe the 60s. I'm just kidding. He worked there, a long
He's
time
not
ago.
that old. That guy looks too
No, I know,
young
I'm
to be
kidding.
that old.
No, I know, I'm kidding. But he was there years before me. Our times didn't overlap there. He did work there, I believe, and I think met his wife there. But I was not on staff, nor was I a member of that church when he was there. Ronnie Floyd was the president of the executive committee, is what you're referring to. Just the last couple of years, he stepped into that role maybe 3 years ago, and was there for a couple of years. But I haven't talked to Ronnie since 2011. So
Now you are a active participant that goes to the Southern Baptist Convention and all, and Paige Patterson has been a subject of discussion at the Southern Baptist Convention, and I think during his tenure, some of these type allegations, and you don't have to comment if you don't want. I mean, because I'm kind of getting out in the weeds a little bit here, but speaking from experience, what's your knowledge to that? I mean, I heard a lot of rumblings about that.
I mean, I know who Paige Patterson is because I've been, going to conventions for 20 years, off and on. He was the president of 2 seminaries, if I remember correctly. But that's really, really all I know about Paige Patterson. I've probably learned a little bit on blogs here and there, but nothing. I don't know. I don't have any firsthand information on any of that as far as it pertains to the Sandy deal that you mentioned.
Well, I think it's been interesting so far, and folks are rolling questions through here, so
that's okay. If you don't mind, Rex, there's one right here. The bottom one on mine says, He's never been paid by First Exposure to go on a CBN event. However, has he ever been reimbursed by First Exposure or any staff member there for his going to CBN? No, I've never gone to a CBN function ever. So no.
Yeah, this was from Larry James Hawkins, so I'll put that up there real quick. All right, so that answers your question, Larry. Let's see. Again, I'm trying to go down through these, so go ahead, dude.
Hey, Brian, I mean, look, you got this, man. I can see you becoming a little uneasy, but I mean, look, I think you're handling this well. So the follow-up question that the person that sent me the question regarding Ronnie Floyd said, is Ronnie Floyd woke?
Man, I don't think so, but I don't know. That's the thing, is I get it. You want to kind of ask questions about the things that we're bringing up, but like I said, I haven't talked to Ronnie in years. I don't know his philosophy. I don't think he is. I think the woke deal is really coming from the younger ranks. Ronnie's probably 60 years old, I think, 60, 65. But no, I don't think he is.
Do you think the wokeism is coming from the newer generation and not the older generation? I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, we call it, we have joked on our show before. We've talked about churchtainment and how I grew up in a small, Southern Baptist little church. I mean, dude, I'm telling you, it was small, and we didn't have any lights. I mean, all the lights were on. It was bright. You could see everybody clear as day. It wasn't dark. There wasn't no colored lights. There wasn't no show. There wasn't any of that. And somebody one time said to me, I described it as churchtainment, and they said to me, well, there's a lot of people that they need to be, that's what we have to do to get them into the church. And I kind of like drew up at that got at me a little bit. And I got to tell you, I find myself, I don't get into that. I don't get into that. It turns me off. And, but I'm wondering, do you think we're going in the wrong direction? Do you think that it's the wokeism? Maybe it's a result of churchtainment, the big church, the competition, the lights, the show. It's more of an entertainment and not about, what it needs to be about.
I think more importantly, there have been false gospels presented since the beginning since Jesus. New Testament warns us time and time again about false Christs and false gospels, and it's really what it is. I mean, social justice seeks to gain something, get you to admit that you're guilty of something that you're not guilty of, and then the goalposts just continue to move, and it's never satisfied. I don't know if it's lights or whatever. I won't speak to methodology. I just think that every generation has a false gospel that's presented. Again, the gospel's that all men need to be reconciled to a holy God, and Christ is the agency to do that. God gave His Son for us to be able to do that. I know that may not be what your audience wants to hear tonight, and probably a great number of them are Christian and know that. But there's plenty of things that I wouldn't agree with, methods that some churches may employ, and yet I wouldn't call them like anti-gospel, you know what I mean? Or that they're creating a drift in the church. I think at the end of the day, you have a great number of people sitting in church pews across America and the world, in any church, any denomination, and any city on any given Sunday that simply do not know the Lord, and don't have a true relationship with Jesus. And I just think that's wholesale true of everybody. I think wokeism is a product of that, of people who don't have, who aren't truly Christians, who have a form of godliness, the Scripture says it, and are seeking to, satisfy with this social justice gospel.
Okay. Duke, you got any more questions or?
And I will say that I do believe, by the way, that probably has a lot to do with the suit. The reason that Brad has been questioned in these things is because it all coincided on timeline. Again, speak to motives, but it all coincides, right, with his participation with the CBN. That's what they're addressing. They're addressing wokeism, and wokeism in the church is a real danger. So I, for one, am grateful for the guys that have stood up for that.
Well, okay. Well, and I hate to keep saying this. I mean, but look, the devil is real. I mean, the devil is real as the good Lord above is real. And if you say that you got wokeism in the church, it's a fair question to ask, or if Pastor Brad is fighting wokeism and the Conservative Baptist Network is fighting wokeism, do we have people walking away from wokeism? And I'll go back because I have not seen, since all of this debacle with First Church and Brad Jerkovich, I've not seen again. And look, when I say this, I mean, look, I like Mike Johnson. I do. But the criticism here is that Mike Johnson has used his faith and used his church. I shared with you in our pre-show that when I ran for the legislature, a local, news media asked me, they said, "Why do you think you lost the race?" And I said to them, I think the reason that I lost the race is because I was unwilling to use my faith to get elected to politics. It's not you saying this. This is me saying this. I think that Mike Johnson walked away from First Bossier and he's not standing beside, Pastor Brad is because he didn't want to get tarnished. I mean, he's now sitting up there at Cypress Baptist, and I'm not wanting to throw rocks, but I'm just stating it as it is. But if Pastor Brad is fighting wokeism, why is Mike Johnson, and why is he not standing by his side? He should be standing by his side. I mean, why are other Christians not standing by his side? What is your thoughts on it? I know you don't want to comment. I know you don't. I mean, and I'm sorry, but you're
That's
here,
okay.
and I gotta throw you that curveball, brother. I gotta do it.
Look, I'm here. I've done what I've done, right? But
We're real, and
I
we're
just
living
I
in the
don't
light right here.
I don't want to comment because I don't know Mike. You know what I mean? I just don't. I mean, Mike wouldn't know who I was if he saw me. If he looked down and saw me.
I've said it on this show
I don't think I
multiple
could pick him
times.
out from a crowd.
I've said it on this show multiple times. Mike knows I'm asking this question. He's heard this question before. And, why has he not addressed it? Why not? Why let me broaden it. Let me back up a little bit. Let me take Mike Johnson individually at it. Why do Christians not stand up for other Christians? Why do we not back each other up when one of us goes out online like you, Brian, here tonight, that's going out on his belief? Why would other Christians not support you in defending yourself publicly on video and saying that, hey, these allegations that are being made against me are untrue? Why would anybody have any objection to that?
I don't know. I think we're just skeptical in general. Look, the comment. No one knows me from Adam on here, and yet everybody wants to know. Well, did he do this? Well, did he do that? As far as other Christians, man, I don't know. I know that it's like Martin Luther King said, right? He said, in the end, it's not the people who, I'm going to butcher this, but basically it's not the people that hurled insults at you that you're going to remember. It's going to be the people who stood silent that had an opportunity to stand up. And look, one of these comments says, this guy's not going to have a job. That's okay. That's okay. Because I don't think that's the case. But at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, what's more important? You know what I mean? A job or being able to stand up and say, what's true. Um,
Well,
Amen
and
to
I'm
that.
I just want to address Ryan Haygood's comment too. That either Brad approved this or isn't going to have a job. Just to reiterate what you said in the beginning, nobody, to be clear, nobody from First Bossier knew you were coming on or approved anything. You didn't ask permission of anybody. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, and that was on purpose because I thought if I mentioned it to anybody or if I, told her, hey, I'm going to be on the show, if I asked, I wasn't sure what the answer was going to be. So, but I need to stand up and say something because these numbers mention my name and they're wrong. And when we hear that, I get it. No one knows me. Maybe people think I'm just sitting here lying, and that's fair because I don't know y'all. But you should listen to both sides. That's in the Bible too, right? Is everything sounds right when you hear a story until you hear the other part of the story, and things start to kind of come together. That's all I'm here doing. I'm not here to defend anyone other than to just say that's wrong, and I'll be glad to back that up. However, I need to back that up.
Yeah, a mentor of mine once told me, he said, there is no black or white or right or wrong. There's only infinite shades of gray. And somewhere in that gray, is the truth. I don't, subscribe to that. Everybody has their own truth because, well, that's not the way it is. There's the truth and, well, then there's not the truth. So I want to say I appreciate you coming on and kind of putting yourself out there because you didn't have to. And at least, whether Duke and I, approve of what Brad's doing politically in the church or not, we wanted to make sure and give you the opportunity to get your side out there.
I appreciate it.
Brian, hat tip to you, brother. I can't say enough about you coming on the show and telling your side of the story. And, just it takes a lot of courage to do that. I think, I described this earlier to you and Rex. We were talking and you had some reservation, a little bit. And the truth of the matter is that, a lot of times when folks are faced with issues and questions in life of what to do and the decisions to make, sometimes people don't know what they're going to do until they're posed with that issue or that question, whether, it's the fight or flight syndrome. That's the thing. And in this case, you didn't fly. You came right here to the public, stated your case, and you know what? Hat tip to you, brother. I mean, let the light shine on it. And I think that's the way in society, all the way around. We need to be more in the churches. I mean, in our individual lives. I mean, if more people were doing that in politics, if more people were doing that, I think society would be better off all the way around. Don't you think?
Absolutely, I think there should be discussion, right? It's one thing to dialogue. It's one thing to monologue. It's nothing to dialogue. So yeah, I think the more people you have at the table, the better. And given the choice, I'd do it again. So I appreciate you guys letting me come on the show. Whatever that means, that's okay. It's just important it was important to me to make sure that you guys understood. They didn't ask me to do it. They didn't know I was going to do it. And yet I felt compelled to do it because it names me. And that's important. We should be able to say what we want to say. Gosh, I'm fixing to quote Dave Chappelle. But on Saturday Night Live last week, Dave Chappelle gave this crazy, intro, and yet at the end, he always does what he always does. He gets real serious, and he said, "It shouldn't be this scary to talk," and that's true. We should be able to just speak up. So.
Can't argue with that at all. Yeah. All right, Brian. Well, we appreciate you coming on again. You're welcome back anytime. Just let us know if you do want to come on or anything like that.
Were we fair, Brian?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay. That's
If we
the
weren't,
main thing.
I mean, now's your opportunity to say no. You guys were
No,
ruthless.
no, you guys were great. I appreciated it.
All right.
All right, Brian.
All right. Well, have a
All
good
right, guys.
evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, you can just go ahead and hang up, and we'll continue talking about you.
Okay. All right. Well, good. See ya.
Well, hello there, Mr. Kyle Ardoin. How are you?
Very well, and yourselves?
Doing pretty good. So, Duke, you had a question there or something we needed to know.
I am dying to know if you think it's cool for a Secretary of State, to seek from social media companies to, censor people's First Amendment rights. I'm just dying to know. Apparently, that's a cool thing in Arizona.
Well, from my perspective, hell to the no. That is
There
not
you
the
go.
right thing to do.
Awesome. Well, that is exactly what I wanted to hear. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I got to tell you,
Duke, I'll tell you this. Frustration from our perspective is the Democrats seem to have, at least the Democratic secretaries of state, seem to have an inroad directly to these social media companies that are able to cut off so-called free speech, if you will. When we have real serious issues of blatant disinformation or misinformation or conflicting problems with information being put out there by groups, we can't ever get any response from the social medias. From my perspective as a Republican Secretary of State, we've had major difficulties. And it's real information that's wrong, and they won't react. They say it doesn't meet their community. How do they put it? Their community regulations or their community policies, and yet, the previous California Secretary of State, who's now a United States Senator, he was in cahoots with Facebook and other social media outlets in Instagram and others that were literally stifling conservative voices out there, and that's very frustrating to me and to other Republican secretaries that there seems to be some cozy relationship on the left with these social media outlets.
Well, if I can remember because I was attacked because I was saying that, conservatives were being censored not long ago. And, it seems that all the conspiracy theorists, black helicopter believers, and whack jobs out there, it seems like we're all turning into freaking geniuses now. Don't y'all agree?
There's certainly a lot of information coming to light, obviously, and we are working it obviously for Louisiana in working towards a new voting system to change from the current system that we have and to provide for a paper option so that the voters can verify their vote before casting it. And I'm excited about that opportunity for us. We're moving forward. We're about to propose
No.
our new standards so that we can get to the new proposal so that we can get to a new bid and get through this process.
Now is that paper the paper ballot? I love paper ballot. That's what I want. That's what I believe in, or whatever. But and I'm sorry we're kind of going off track here a little bit, but I got to ask you, the paper ballot, is that hand paper ballot or is that machine generated paper ballot? What are we talking about here?
Right now, it probably would be a combination because the Voting System Commission, and pardon me for my voice, I lost it right before Thanksgiving. I'm still trying to get it back, but it would be probably a combination of both because we have to have the disability, we have to serve the disability community, and then we have to make sure that we can tabulate and have accurate counts on election day, and then be able to audit it right after the election. And so that's where we're headed from.
Yeah,
headed toward.
I want to kick my 2 cents in here. I'm not a fan of 100% paper ballot because, well, we all remember the debacle from the 2000 election thanks to Florida. And there are problems or potential issues with strictly paper, but I 100% agree that we have the paper as, your backup for it, so that you have some way to double check.
Without a doubt, we have to be able to audit the elections, have a risk limiting audit, if you will, that'll prove that either the machines are working correctly or not. I will tell you that I was working towards the possibility of a trial program of what we would have seen as a paper in early voting, a paper tracking system. I'm glad that we didn't do it because what we were concerned with is what exactly happened in Arizona. And so it would have been, because we're under the same contract we're under now, it would have been this, it could have been the same debacle there. So again, Louisiana has shown that we know how to perform our elections. We just have to get to the next step and show the rest of the country how to do it better and more perfectly. And I'm excited as to where we're headed. I'm excited that we're ranked by Heritage Foundation as 6th in the nation in election integrity. Even the liberals rank us first in the South, and we're not going to always agree with them, the Electoral Integrity Project. But if both sides are seeing us doing something right, then I think we are an example for the rest of the country. And to move that forward, if I may, Constitutional Amendment number 1 on the ballot is an effort to stop or prevent, as we did early on before the presidential election. We had the foresight to stop and prevent ballot harvesting in the 2020 election in Louisiana. And that's what I'm trying to do with Amendment number 1, that will prevent any local governing authority to allow non-citizens to vote in their election.
Okay, and so I'm trying to quickly pull up the screenshots for that. Let's see, that's going to be cut 6. Give me just a second here, and that'll kind of help everybody out. Let's see, publish. I think that ought to be close enough there. Okay, so just for the folks that are viewing it or whatever, I've got the 3, or at least what's on our ballot, the 3 constitutional amendments. And so you were just referring to Constitutional Amendment number 1. Is that correct?
That is correct. It would require, so there's a loophole in the Constitution. It only requires that a Louisiana citizen be allowed to register and vote. This requires not only to be a Louisiana citizen, but to be a citizen of the United States, which provides for preventing a local governing authority, say example, New Orleans or Caddo, whichever, to allow for non-citizens to vote in their local elections. If any local municipality or city passes a ordinance to allow non-citizens to vote, it will desecrate our election voting rolls and the integrity of our elections. And so that's what I'm trying to prevent with Amendment number 1. So if you vote for yes for Amendment number 1, then you're preventing local governments from allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections.
Yeah, it seems like that would just be common sense, but I guess the loophole would be maybe if somebody comes over here on a green card or visa or however that works, maybe a professor or something at a college, that's from whatever country it may be. I guess they could come over and they can apply for citizenship from the state, but not necessarily U.S. citizenship, I guess.
Well, if you're living in the state of Louisiana and you get a Louisiana driver's license and you're recognized by the government, then technically you're a Louisiana citizen and you're not technically a United States citizen. To me, this obliterates the naturalization process. Those people who work hard to become U.S. citizens and want to vote in our state and federal elections. And so although there's a law on the federal books that prevents non-citizens from voting in federal elections, There's obviously no prohibition from allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections, and that's what we're trying to do. You see this being done in San Francisco, New York City, District of Columbia, and everybody says, "Oh, well, those are big liberal cities." Well, in Montpelier, Vermont, they've had a long time standing ability to allow non-citizens to vote. There are areas in Maryland that non-citizens are allowed to vote in local elections. And in California, the way they play it is that, it's school board elections. So, the individuals are paying local taxes, and so they should have a say-so in their children's education. But the fact of the matter is, what they're doing is they're just they're using a loophole to just disintegrate the reality of the sanctity of our votes and voters in our country by allowing non-citizens to vote, and that's just egregious to me, in my opinion.
I
Well,
would
well,
definitely agree with you there.
absolutely. Well, and there's a lot of other states that I think are passing this same amendment to their constitution as well. I mean, I just saw one the other day that had, in this election cycle, they adopted this. But I would also say that, in theory, let's say that, illegals were allowed to vote in, let's say, one city, and it uh, steered an election. I mean, it could, in theory, decide whether control of the Senate or control of the House went one way or the other. That could determine electoral votes. And and this is way kind of out of the ballpark. I probably ought not even say this, Secretary Ardoin, but there is a case coming before the Supreme Court, Brunson versus Adams. I don't know if you've read it or if you had opportunity to follow it, but it was basically articulating that our Congress, and this goes back to the 2020 election, when there are charges of fraud in an election, and I use this example of the illegals, if they were to vote, that would obviously be something that was illegal. But if Congress and our government didn't take action, then they basically yield their positions in government, and the people have the right, to have new elections and appoint a new government or new officials. And I think this is a way to try to prevent that. But there's already a case fixing to be heard before the Supreme Court, and I would encourage you to read it if you haven't read it.
I certainly will, and I'll bring it to the attention of my attorneys. I think what this does is this brings, by putting it into the Constitution, we bring it to a higher level of the ability to fight this issue. Right now, it's currently in the statutes, the revised statutes, the regular laws, if you will. But the bottom line is, without it being enshrined in the Constitution by a broad-based support in the legislature, which we had a bipartisan vote and passed 2/3 in both houses. In fact, it passed the state Senate with only one nay vote, which was surprising to me, given the Democrats that are in the Senate. But then it rises to the level of the people putting into the Constitution, approving an amendment that says you have to be a United States citizen and a Louisiana citizen in order to vote in this state. And to not enshrine it in the Constitution, I think, is to put us in jeopardy of an activist group seeking an activist judge to change intent of who should vote in the state of Louisiana. And if that occurs, it obliterates our system. And I'm just, to me, that is just wrong. I want to be proactive. I've been proactive. The legislature questioned my legislation that we passed to preventing vote harvesting, preventing ballot boxes. And if you recall, in 2020, New Orleans sued me. The city of New Orleans sued me to force me to try to put ballot boxes all around the city. And we prevented that. And so this is another one of those efforts that we have to continue to push election integrity while others are seeking to do the opposite. And I think this is extremely important for the state of Louisiana. Ohio just passed it in November. They were the latest state to do so. So I think we're on the right side of this issue, and I hope that, regardless of how people read it, the effort needs to be to vote for Amendment number 1, because I think the wording is a little confusing for people. But the bottom line is it actually prevents non-citizens from voting in our local elections, and from allowing local governments to allow them to vote. And because as you well know, once Pandora's box is open, Katie barred the door. We're in trouble, and I don't want that to happen to Louisiana.
So we've got a couple of questions in the comments, and I'll kind of filter these out, so to speak, because of Ryan Haygood's comments. But anyway, Duke, your wife Kara is in the commentary, and she says, "How do they check citizenship?" So how do we confirm that these people are actual U.S. citizens or whatever before they are able to register to vote?
So there's multiple ways that we do that. First, obviously, we don't get enough information from the federal government, so we have to really struggle for it. One, when people apply for a driver's license, those that are foreigners or non-citizens have a different designation, so we check for that. Second, we check residency, we check other information. We look for the Social Security index. We're looking at every possible amount of information that we possibly can. One thing that we also do is that we have a reporting mechanism from the federal judicial system, as well as the state and parish judicial system, that if someone says that they don't want to serve as a member of a jury because they're a non-citizen, then obviously we utilize that. I was working with some members of Congress, one or two that got beat, unfortunately, but we'll continue to do that, is to be able to get more information through the federal government about the naturalization process and those that are applying for green.
Uh-oh. We have frozen. Okay, if you can still hear us, give it a couple of seconds and then maybe sign off and use the same link and come back in. If not, Duke, I'll get you to text him here in a second.
Yeah.
And we'll do the call-in phone number if we have to.
Yeah, if we have to. Yeah, that's good information. So, like on the Amendment 1, and while we got this short break, I want to say to everybody that I think both, Amendment 1, 2, and 3, those are all amendments that we need to support and vote. The second and the third, I think one was having, the legislature approve or vote for, I'm thinking it's on the governor's recommendation, appointees to the state civil service board system, which is a good thing. As it stands now, you would have just the governor appointing them, but if you do have legislative oversight, that's a good thing. There's more eyes and more hands in the pot, per se. Same thing with the state. I think it was the state police board. Again, I think that you want to have both legislative approval and as well as the governor. Let's get more people liable for the decisions of who you're going to have on these boards and put in there. That's my reading and that's my understanding of them. So I'm going to be voting yes on all three of those.
Yeah, and I would totally agree with you on that. So I tell you what, he tried to log in again and had an issue. Do you have the phone number, the call-in number handy, Duke, or do I need to text it to you?
Don't text it to me real quick. And whenever we do get him back in, I want to go back to some of his comments, specifically regarding like risk limiting audits that he mentioned, because, and I don't want to say what I think about him. I'm going to wait till he comes on. That way, like I'm saying it behind his back, but I have my own opinion on risk limiting audits. And then I want to go back to this paper because, got a little bit of concern on paper. All right, let me get this to him real quick. There we go. Because I Rex, I'm a wonk on some of this election stuff. Have been. I mean,
Right.
look, I was a wonk on election stuff before it was cool to be a wonk on election stuff. You know that. I mean,
You've always been a little wonky with it, so.
I mean, who else do you know was making videos of whether or not with a hairdryer you could stuff a ballot or not? I was doing it before it was cool.
Yes, you were. We have officially stuffed a ballot for testing purposes only. Let me be clear about that.
That's right. Now, wait a minute. Did we tell him the last time that we were practicing that?
We
Did
may
we
have
ever?
we may have mentioned that. So
Did we ever disclose that to the Secretary of State? I don't know.
maybe. All right. Let's see if he. Let's see. Come on. He's trying to log in again, so we'll see here. Let me see if I can assign him to maybe guest 2. All right. So let's see here. Just a second. Let me put him over on guest 2. Aha. Okay. So do we have audio?
I'm here.
Perfect. You're back again.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
There's somewhere between you and us, which is thousands of miles of cables and all sorts of things, a connection dropped. I mean, what could go wrong?
Right.
Well, look, I've got a personal disclosure to make, and I got to tell you, I got a lot of questions for you. Because you said a couple of things I want to go back to, but I got a personal disclosure I got to make with you, Secretary Ardoin. You may not realize this or not, but I was an election wonk before it was cool to be an election wonk. Did you know that?
So was I.
Well, I know that about you.
Hence
but
the
you
reason you're probably the Secretary of State.
So I'm glad you were, Duke. I need company in this world.
Well, Duke has a confession to make also, and I think he may have made it when we had you on before I think it was show 107, but you may want to listen carefully because we may want to get the law involved here.
I just want you to know you can, in fact, use a hairdryer to open a mail ballot and replace the ballot inside and reseal it. I just thought you might want to know. You don't know whether to take me serious or not.
But can you remove the flap?
Didn't I do that, Rex?
I'm pretty sure we actually did it live on the air for testing purposes only, of course. So we'd have to go back and review the video.
The election was over and passed, and it wasn't. Anyway, it was after the election. It was way over, and it was an old mail ballot. We made a copy, and it was my ballot, and showed it on the video from beginning to end, sealed it up. Then, after, kind of in the show, then we took a hairdryer, warmed the glue, opened it up, took the ballot out, put a new ballot in. Voila. It worked.
But you had to have access to a new ballot.
Oh, yeah. Well, we made our own, just like in Arizona and Georgia and Pennsylvania, everywhere else.
Oh, but guess what?
I've got a copy machine. That gum.
The copy machine ain't
What,
going to
you
work.
think I'm an amateur here?
Our scanners detect the weight of the paper. It's a proprietary paper, and a copy of it won't pass the security parts, the timing marks on the side. The timing marks have to work exactly.
Okay, don't make me get Joe Von Pulitzer in here now. I know that was a thing for him. But
look, when I'm back up north, I'm gonna visit with you on that one. All right,
with the state police in tow.
You got to find me first. I can run fast.
No, I'm not gonna do that. It was after the election, so it wasn't. He didn't try to submit a fraudulent ballot.
Well, anyway, so you said you was talking about paper ballots, and then you were talking about risk limited audits. Okay, I didn't want to say what I thought about risk limited audits, and I may have said this in the previous show, and I may be beating a dead horse, and you can already read my mind is what I'm thinking. I think risk limiting audits are crap. I mean, if we can, and here's my position on that. If we can send billions of dollars to a country over there and arms that can end up turning around, taking that and selling them to someplace in South America, and they're ended up coming up on our border, by gosh, we ought to be able to have an audit where we count every ballot and completely inspect everything. And we don't have to do this small percentage that is quote unquote mathematically supposed to reflect everything. I think that's BS myself on a risk limiting. I don't agree with that. I don't, and I think I speak for a lot of people.
Well, I certainly understand your point, but the reality is that if you move more and more to paper, then when do you want your results? You want your results election night like we have now, or you want your election results weeks later because you're waiting on 100% audit of all 64 parishes? If you're able to do a risk limiting audit, of which, by the way, months ago, a year ago, that was what everybody was pushing for. Oh, we got to have risk limiting audits because that's going to prove that the machines are working correctly. Bottom line is that why do we keep moving the measurement back and forth? The bottom line is that either you have all paper and you wait weeks for your election results, or you have a mechanism by which you have paper and electronic tabulation, and then you audit in a respectable way with accounting principles. Have a third party do it, like the legislative auditor. They've audited us. They've seen how we've done elections, and they have given us glowing remarks of how we do it. I mean, that's the big question. If you have problems like in Maricopa County, then I would absolutely require 100% audit in that county, because you need to make sure every single ballot has counted and is accurately counted, and that the machines operate properly. And the fact that they didn't from the get-go is, okay, what were the processes that they had for containing the ballots, for transferring the ballots to the new facility, to the overall counting. I guess they call it the central counting process. I mean, those are all things that we're looking at. We're looking at where states are making mistakes, so that when we move forward, we don't make those same mistakes. But I don't want to get too far past what the objective is for tonight, and because Duke and Rex, I'm more than willing to talk about any issue that we have moving forward. I just want the people of Louisiana to understand that we got to pass Amendment number 1, vote yes for Amendment number 1, to prevent non-citizens from voting in local elections, or allowing local governments to allow non-citizens to vote in their elections, because that would just be a horrible precedent to set. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, agreed 100%. And I'm going to go out on a limb, and if that fails or whatever, you know what? I'm going to come volunteer my time to work for you. And I'm going to eat my crow every freaking day. But why can't we? Because I believe this, Secretary. I believe that people feel like me. The majority of people feel like me on risk limiting audits. That why do it? Why bother? That we would rather. And I also believe, but we're never going to ask this question. I also believe that people are willing to wait on the results. Now, politicians, no, they want to know that night, right then and there. But I think maybe that we all, and I'm including myself, we're all spoiled from historically getting the results that night. We've done a good job in Louisiana. We have, but across, and I'm speaking widely, I'm speaking across the country, but we're all spoiled in that we're wanting this result. If you contracted me to build a boat or to build your house, you're not going to say to me, okay, you got to have it done by midnight, or else, but if I said, okay, if you give me a week or two or a month to guarantee you that it's 100% correct, I'm going to guarantee you that it's not going to sink, and I'm going to guarantee you it's not going to fall off the cliff into the ocean. I'm going to take the month.
Well, first of all, I don't know of any houses on the ocean in Louisiana, but I will say this, Duke, you know as well as I do. Look at what has happened in other states. We had just 2 years ago, we had conservative members of Congress winning on election night, and 2 weeks later being told that they lost the elections. Don't no one can tell me that no one's going to claim fugabooing going on after the election and late counts. And it just creates another mechanism by which people don't believe in the system on either side. And let's face the reality. Before 2016, Democrats were claiming, or upon 2016, Democrats were claiming the election was rigged. Now it's the Republicans. And the bottom line is no one's trusting the system because it's now become, if my candidate loses, the election's rigged. The bottom line is that if we can have accurate results on election night, and then we can have audits after the election to prove the election is correct, I'm all for that. But if we are expanding the way we count ballots and the way the time frame that ballots are going to be counted, then we have problems. Look, Louisiana is a leader in this because we require our absentee ballots to be in by 4:30 p.m. the day before the election. Other than that, the only people that can ballots be turned in is military, overseas, and hospitalized voters. You can quantify that very easily because it's very few voters, and they have to be in by 8 p.m. on election night, which means either you're faxing it or it's come in by the mail. And the bottom line is those are then calculated or counted, by Tuesday of the following day, of the following after election day by the Board of Election Supervisors, and they're checked and they're cleared. But we have a system that works. It is not. We're not. Oh well, if your ballot is postmarked. Oh, or if you turned in 50 ballots. We don't even have that in Louisiana because we prevented that in 2020 when we passed the law, the anti-ballot harvesting law, where if you turn in anybody's ballot, it can only be your family members if you're doing more than one, which can only be two. You still fill out a piece of paper. You show your ID. You're explaining what your relationship is, and you're attesting to the fact that that individual said you could turn in their ballot. Otherwise, if it's not a family member, you can only turn in one. So we don't have what Georgia's going through. We don't have what Arizona's been through. And these states keep replicating their problems over and over again and giving the rest of us, egg in the face, so to speak. Look, I understand where people are coming from. I want validation of people's votes. I want the voter to validate first and foremost. Secondly, I want to be able to have the tabulation in election day. And thirdly, I want to be able to audit. If the legislature decides they want 100% audit, okay, we'll figure out a way to do it as long as they give me the money to do it. If they decide it's a risk limiting audit, then so be it. But the bottom line is all these issues rely upon the legislature's decision, even the next contract with the next vendor, once this process is over with. So, excuse me, dry throat. Bottom line is it's going to be a collaboration effort. And we're working on the standards that we'll present to the people in public hearings and for legislative oversight, and then we'll go into the RFP. But I don't want to leave this night without expressing my absolute concern that if people don't vote for amendment number 1, voting yes, then we're still leaving ourselves open. I think that's why we're ranked by Heritage Foundation as 6th in the nation. If we're able to pass this constitutional amendment, I think we move up in the rankings. And the next level is we've got to ban private dollars in elections in this state, which we've tried 3 times now. The governor's vetoed it twice, and it didn't make it through the process last year. But I'm still promoting that issue. I'm pushing that issue. There's just so much to do. There's so many issues that we face. And again, the governor has vetoed twice in a row a piece of legislation that I've pushed that allows me to delve deeper into the voting rolls and to clean up our voting rolls. But he continues to block that effort for me. It is a constitutionally
So the governor is standing in the way of cleaning up the voting rolls.
That is exactly correct. We found a decision by the U.S. Supreme Court from an issue in Ohio, a court case from Ohio and citizens suing Ohio. And it was then Secretary Husted, who I believe now is Lieutenant Governor or outgoing Lieutenant Governor. I don't recall. But the bottom line is that it would have given me more authority to go in, delve deep into the voting rolls, to force the registrars to go into the community and to actually contact directly, not by postal service, but actually could directly contact voters and say, hey, are you there? And if you're not there, then we're going to take you off the rolls. And I will tell you, I've got a registrar that out of Tangible Hill Parish, she did an excellent job. We had a number of complaints that people were taken off the rolls because they didn't answer her mail and they were incorrectly registered because they weren't registered at their homestead. Some were registered at their business. Some were registered at relatives' homes. That's what we need to do, because we can't allow people who are registered because they've always voted at mom and dad's house and changed their registration. I want to be able to say, if you have changed your driver's license address, then you should have changed your voter registration address. So we're going to be pursuing that. And look, I got a whole host of things. Y'all know me. I am like on fire about all this. But most important, let's get Constitutional Amendment number 1 passed this Saturday, get it on the books, get a higher level of protection for the voters of Louisiana, and then let's go tackle all these other things that we can continue to try to attack and get on the books. And if the governor vetoes it again, okay, so what? I'll run on it again, and I will tell Louisianians, I need a conservative governor that will sign this into law.
All right, so let me summarize a couple of questions real quick for you coming in from the audience. Are there going to be any changes coming to the way we will vote in Louisiana in 2024?
That depends on the process. I think we will probably be in the process of making changes, but we won't have full implementation because we will have to do a lot of education and training, both for election workers, also voters.
All right, and one more question. I'm gonna reword our good friend Ryan Haygood's question just a little bit. So, what's the status of Dominion and their voting machines and the state of Louisiana? Any change there, movement either way yet?
No, I've got to be able to go through the RFP process. So the law requirement with the Voting System Commission has met. And by the way, I see Ryan says, I trust this guy as far as I can throw him. So I'm going to take that with a grain of salt. But bottom line is the law requires me to work with my staff, develop standards that we have to meet, both national standards and state standards, then go through a public hearing process. Then we have to go through a legislative oversight process. Then once that's accepted, then we can start the request for proposals process as what the Voting System Commission voted.
And one other quick point.
No. There's one detail, and we're gonna let Secretary Ardoin. We're not gonna abuse his time a whole lot more. But there's one detail I want to go back to that I didn't get to go to a while ago, and when he was talking about the paper ballots, I want to hand mark my paper ballot, but I think where we're heading is a machine generated paper ballot. Now you actually said that we're going to have both. So I'm assuming that the hand marked ballot, I mean, that's not going to be me. I'm not going to get to mark my own hand marked ballot, probably, correct?
That's not determined yet. I think the possibility exists that either an individual can choose to allow the ballot marking device to mark their ballot if they so choose, or to produce a full-face paper ballot that the individual can mark on their own and then take it to the tabulator on both cases. Then the tabulator would secure those numbers and then would secure the paper for the audit process after the election.
So, okay. So yeah, well, I mean, I want to be able to mark my ballot, and I think a lot of people do want to be able to hand mark their ballot, and I think that would be a really great thing. Granted, I know you've got a lot of people that are making decisions, and a commission and a legislature, and a lot of people, a lot of hands in the cookie jar, you might say. But I think a lot of people would have a lot more faith if they were able to, hand mark their own ballots. And I specifically recall, Dr. Halderman, making some comments in regards to ballot marking devices, which, that caught my attention and give me pause. So when you were saying that, what you said earlier about the, both, that kind of caught my attention, what you were saying.
Yeah, because obviously, I mean, bottom line is what we're seeing from the public is the push for both. Some don't want to move away from machines. Some want to move away from machines. Obviously, with the way that we look at things, the federal law requires us to reach the necessity for the disabled community to be able to vote as independently as possible. And so that would require ballot marking devices for them. Then you also have a segment of the public that I hear from as I travel around the state that they don't want to go to hand marked paper ballots. But I certainly understand that there are a number of folks, and I say number, a decent percentage of folks around the state that would rather mark their own ballots by hand. And so if the ballot marking device can provide or not provide, create your ballot style for your precinct, which we know the technology exists, then, and you want to mark it by hand, then I don't see a reason that should be prohibited. And then you like the disabled individual or the voter choosing to use a ballot marking device walks over to the tabulation device and submits it to them into that machine for the tabulation purposes. I am convinced that both of those need to be separated so that there's no connectivity and that they're standalone processes that are working, so that we don't have any issues that we've seen in other states.
Yeah, I in particular, I want to sign my name on my ballot because there's no vote that I make that I'm not going to stand out here in front of God and everybody and say that's what I believe. And you know what? The truth of the matter is I may vote on something and I may vote the wrong way, but I'm willing to own up to it. And I wish a lot more people that voted in elections weren't fearful. I mean, and I respect the fact that there's some people that can be intimidated if somebody knows the way that they vote or whatever, but I think if more people in the public stood up on their principles and what they believed in and weren't afraid to say what they believed, we wouldn't have a lot of this crap going on. And so for me personally, if I get the opportunity, I'm going to sign my name in big bold print across my ballot. And then you know what? If I want to go back and check my ballot, you're going to know because that idiot signed his name.
Well, and certainly, I mean, if you want to do that, sir, I don't think anything stops you from doing that today if you vote absentee. But certainly, there are those who want the sacred right of a private ballot, and that's okay. I mean, everybody has the right to that. I will tell you this. I think it's important to note because I am seeing some of the comments here. We still have in law the requirement that any vendors that are responding to the request for proposals must be American owned. They cannot have more than 25% ownership outside of the U.S. And quite frankly, I don't really want anything outside the U.S. But the bottom line is some of the equipment, some of the technology can't always come from the U.S. at this point in time. Had President Trump continued in his service, I think we would have a much more production created economy where we would be creating our own technology versus being dependent upon foreign technology. But in the end, we do have some protections in place And so any companies with foreign influence will not be considered in this process. And we do require them to disclose their board membership. We require them to disclose their ownership. And so I'm really pleased with where we are in terms of the law, and we'll look and see if there needs to be some tweaking before the request for proposals is actually released. And we can do that in this upcoming session.
Well, I want
I will say this. I see Ryan Haygood talking about Connectech. I can't even
We know who
pronounce
you're
it.
talking about.
We have no contract with them. We never have. They are on the Office of State Procurement's distribution list for future contracts of any part of state government. But that doesn't mean that they are actually a part of our system, and they are not. I want people to understand that they are absolutely not part of our system, have never had a contract with our elections or with the Secretary of State. And I don't see that changing, especially with what's going on and the way the law is written.
Well, I want to bring up a couple of more points as we kind of wrap it up. And again, we appreciate all your time this evening. So
you didn't know you was going to take all the beatings tonight, did you?
Well, Duke, I've been taking some beatings for 2 years now, and I don't
true.
think all rightfully so. But I think if people look at my record and what we've done for election integrity in Louisiana, how we've strengthened our laws, how we've strengthened our systems, and continue to do so, I think they see we're going in the right direction. And I'm not afraid of answering tough questions at all. And I mean, people want me to say, "Oh, heck no, no dominion, blah, blah, blah." Look, I can only do what I can do, and I can only say what I can say without getting us in some legal trouble. But there's a reason why we're going out for an RFP. And so I hope people understand that. But I'm just not going to put myself in a position where I'm going to put myself and my family in a legal quandary, with all that's going on since 2020. I've got a little bit more sense of that. We've got to have a competitive process, and it's got to be a level playing field. And, I may not like the people that bid, but it's going to be up to a committee that the legislature designated that I have to appoint, and they're going to make an independent decision, and then we'll send it to Office of State Procurement, and then we'll send it also to the legislature.
Well, looks like we may have frozen. Let's try again.
I'm going to put myself in jeopardy.
Well, and speaking of that, I'd like to remind everybody.
How about that?
We got you live now. I'd like to remind everybody that you watching that you also need to reach out to your legislators and put the pressure on them as far as specific types of systems or anything that they would that our viewers would like to see. I don't know, you got to go through the competitive bidding process, but if there's anything specific that you want to see, reach out to your legislatures and go up the chain that way. And I also want to point out, David Jones brought up a good point earlier, so I'm going to put his comment up. He said, "I'm sorry, folks, look at turnout. Do people really want to be troubled with participating in democracy?" He brings up a good point that we need more people participating in the process to begin with.
You're exactly correct. And the frustrating point is, one of the most important constitutional amendments is on the ballot on Saturday. And you know what our estimate of turnout is less than 20%. And we had almost a 46% turnout for the November election. And I get it. There was a lot more on the ballot in November. I don't like December elections. I want to get away from December elections, but we have to deal with some court issues with our federal delegation and when they're considered elected and not. And so, but those are all the things that I want to take on and really work towards in the last 4 years. I mean, we've dealt with a significant natural disasters over the last 3 years. This year being different, praise God, and putting on elections, also amongst COVID, and preventing wildly wild changes in our elections procedures. And I'm proud of that because we protected what was law. We made some concessions, but minimal concessions, unlike other states that just blew the doors wide open, and Supreme Courts, like in Pennsylvania, decided you can count votes, days after the election when the legislature said no. And I mean, we've done a great job in Louisiana. I'm proud of the record. I'm proud of my staff. I'm proud to work with the clerks of court and the registrars of voters with the natural disasters that we have seen over the last several years in putting on our elections. And it's been very stressful. It's been long hours. My staff is, I mean, you work in state government, you don't get high pay, you get good benefits, but even those benefits have lagged in recent years. But the bottom line is they never stop working. And I'm so proud of that. And I just want the people of Louisiana to know that we're constantly on the job. And, elections is not a flip on, flip off switch. It is constant work because we have to do maintenance. We have to do, maintenance, list maintenance of our voter registration rolls, and everything's being more and more um, tied into a tighter type time frame. And we really need to loosen that up. I think we need to do away with spring elections, those small tax elections. I know local government doesn't like to hear that, but the bottom line is that with the newer technology and a new voting system, we ought to be able to do that because our voters are fatigued. And let's face it, in Louisiana, we're always looking at an election. We have 4 elections a year. There are some states that don't have elections, but every 2 years. Do we really need that many elections? It's time to do some reforms. And when local governments put taxes on the ballot and they lose, and then they put it back on the ballot and they lose, and they put it back on the ballot and they lose, when is no no? I mean, the people are tired of all this. And so it's just a lot of issues that we have to face. And I'm looking forward to working towards that. I'm looking forward to pulling ourselves um, out of where we are from all these natural disasters and the COVID, and getting to a place where we can continue the proactive approach that we've taken, like anti-ballot harvesting and like constitutional amendment number 1 on the ballot this Saturday that everybody needs to vote yes for.
I can't disagree with any of that. In my time of being on the board of election supervisors up here in Bossier Parish, working with, the guys from your office and gals and all that, it went pretty flawless up here at the registrar of voters and all that. So I think you guys are doing overall a pretty good job.
Well, thank you very much. And look, I know we're closing, and I just want to step back a minute, and I just want to wish all your viewers a very Merry Christmas. Our good Lord, Jesus Christ, our Savior, is the reason for this season. And no matter what happens politically, he's the man. And there's nothing else more important than making sure that we're right with him before we take the next step. And so I wish you all the best. Your families a very Merry Christmas, a peaceful New Year. And I just ask Louisianians to go vote.
Amen to that. All right.
All right. So I'm getting texts saying this is a bad interview. No hard questions. Y'all let him scoot.
What?
That's what I'm getting. I'm getting beat up.
Well, Duke, it just goes to show you can't satisfy everybody.
Not everybody is going to be happy no matter what we ask.
That's right.
All right. Well, we appreciate it anyway. So,
Duke and Rex, I could just say, "Welcome to my world."
Yeah, exactly correct.
Well, now they're agreeing in the comments. So anyway, well, all right. So you're going to have to come back for an interview, and I'm going to have to pound you with questions.
Yeah. We'll
Okay.
we'll have to rough
Wait.
you up the next time.
You gonna let me pound you with hard questions, Kyle?
I didn't think you were going light on me on this one.
Well,
All right.
I tell
I
you
think
what.
Jason just said typical politician. He talks everybody to sleep. Well, I didn't know I was talking anybody to sleep.
Well, I don't know. Well, look, no, seriously, people have a lot of questions still. And I mean, you're not the only person in here. You're the one that has to take all the questions and get a lot of the beatings. And, I mean, I got a million questions. I could keep you on here all night long and I could hit you with a million questions. And there's some questions that I haven't asked you. I would love to ask you. And I think are pertinent to the conversation. I'm just one person. I'm some guy that's got a little old small social media show with 100-something votes. I mean, you're a guy who's been elected statewide by a majority of the people of the state of Louisiana. And we appreciate you coming on and answering any questions. There's no limitation here. You didn't tell us don't ask you any question whatsoever. You haven't done that. And I told you how I felt about risk limiting audits. You explained to me your position of how it's justified. I may not agree with you, but I respect what you're saying. I think regardless, every audit needs to be freaking every single vote. I don't care. It should be a priority. If we make having dog catchers a priority in every city in the state, we should make counting votes, every single one of them, verifying they're accurate. We should make that a priority. But you know what? You don't hold the purse strings. You don't. There's other people that hold the purse strings. And
I do not. And look, the legislature made it very clear in the last 3 years. Each year they put in the appropriations bill that the Joint Legislative Committee on the Budget, must approve the contract. So it's like, okay, it's a joint effort. Let's go for it. I have nothing to hide. I'm not looking for any one particular company. I'm looking for the best system for Louisiana. And we keep going out in the public and getting information, and we're going to do, it's going to probably be a wide open bid because there's so many different options out there, and then see where the chips fall. I mean, it doesn't matter.
You know what? The best system, let's get the military in here. I want to walk away with ink on my fingertips on my hand marked ballot. That's what I want. No knock on you. No knock on you, but I don't trust the machine. Rex right there, he doesn't care. He'll stick his ballot in the black box and he's fine with that. He doesn't care. But me, I'm the black helicopter guy. I don't want to put my ballot in some machine and hope for the best. I don't want that. And I think a majority of people of the state don't want to guess.
Let's not belabor the point too long, but no, that is not what Rex believes. Rex just happens not to trust people either.
Yeah. All right.
Well, I see that. I'll end on this, but I see that Ryan is talking about the best system. Let's see, what is it? The military is the only way. I would suggest that he does a little bit more digging, because I think the military is part of the problem behind the scenes and in the deep state, because there's a lot more going on. If the military is the option, then we're looking at a federalized system, and you can build it.
And I don't trust the federal government at all. And there's that whole thing called posse comitatus that comes into play with the military being around where I'm going to vote.
I mean, bottom line is the Constitution should be sovereign, and the Constitution provides that each state provides for how their elections are going to be conducted. And I think that is the most important, because as we as Republicans and conservatives believe, the closer you are to government, and that's making the decisions, is the best way to be in control of the government. And so the less government, the better. The more power we give to the federal government, we're tattooed. That's all I can, say.
I would agree with that.
All right. Constitutional Amendment number 1. We're voting yes for it.
Amendment number 1, vote yes. It will prevent local governments from allowing non-citizens to vote in local elections, and we all need that protection. So,
Agreed.
God bless,
All right.
guys. Appreciate
All right,
y'all.
Thank you.
Have a good
See y'all
evening.
again
Thank you.
soon. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This Bossier Watch live broadcast is brought to you by David B. Womack for all your contracting and construction needs. The Outdoor News, fishing and outdoors for our area. Acadiana Mortgage, over 23 years in the mortgage business. Pelican Training and Consulting is an IWTP customized training provider with over 25 years of success to show for it. Call them for a free consultation today. Pelican Training and Consulting matches employers with 50-plus employees with training dollars. Smarter Geek, making technology easier. And the many supporters, donations, and folks sharing information and watching out for Bossier. Now, grab your popcorn and a drink. Here we go.